Who would believe that the baby in swaddling clothes before them was actually a high-ranking witch who had lived for 300 years? Her magic was so powerful that she could destroy an entire nation in an instant. Yet now, she had been stabbed through the heart by the one she loved and died, her soul drawn by the bloodline of the dragon royal family, reincarnating as the daughter of her mortal enemy from her previous life. Her name was Arena, originally a witch who had lived for 300 years and possessed immense magical power. Because she despised humans, she had always lived alone deep in the mountains. On this day, the young prince of the kingdom of Karel was being hunted down by his elder brother. In a panic, he fled into the deep mountains and accidentally encountered the witch. Arena, who had not seen a man for many years, fell in love at first sight with the handsome young prince before her. Before long, the witch helped the young prince ascend to the throne, but the prince deceived her. On the day he promised to propose, the ring he took out was in fact a sharp long sword. Just like that, no matter how powerful Arena's witch's body was, it could not withstand the betrayal of love, and she died on the spot, filled with hatred. However, due to her special witch constitution, her spiritual core was not damaged, and she managed to preserve her soul. As long as she wandered for 10 years and slowly absorbed power, she would be reborn. But things did not go as she wished. When she opened her eyes again, Arena discovered that she had been reborn as a royal baby. Immediately afterward, a servant slapped her little bottom repeatedly, leaving Arena momentarily at a loss. But the servant only wanted the baby to cry out loud. Otherwise, she would be discarded by His Majesty the Emperor as a useless waste. Hearing this, Arena had no choice but to professionally fake a few cries. Only then did the servant feel relieved, wiping her tears as she said that the princess must survive. After hearing this, Arena was full of question marks, thinking, as a royal princess, why must I die? With doubts in her heart, Arena recalled the cause of her previous death and swore inwardly that she would find that young prince and tear him to pieces. But this body was far too fragile at the moment, so she could only first try to sense how capable this infant body truly was. After trying, Arena was shocked to discover that her spiritual power was actually higher than when she was a witch, reaching a full 5 stars, whereas in her infancy as a witch, she had only had 2 stars. This made Arena instantly fall in love with her new body, and she even developed ambitions of conquering the continent. Next, the servant carried Arena to the palace to have an audience with His Majesty the Emperor. At a glance, His Majesty noticed that Arena had the distinctive appearance of silver white hair and red eyes. The servant hurriedly explained that she looked very much like the previous emperor, Eskina. Hearing this, Arena immediately realized that Eskina was not that old northern dragon with whom she had had an especially bad relationship in her previous life. At that moment, His Majesty wanted to confirm whether she truly possessed dragon blood, and in the next second, he cast a spell and placed his hand on Arena's little belly. Arena immediately cried out in pain and instinctively bit His Majesty's hand. The emperor winced in pain and quickly stopped the spell. Seeing this, the servant immediately knelt to plead for mercy, saying the child was too young and begging His Majesty not to blame her. This sequence of events instead made the emperor feel that this child was extraordinary. She bit before she cried. She was simply a genius. He announced on the spot that she could choose her sword the next day. Upon hearing this, the servant turned pale with fright and immediately pleaded with His Majesty, saying Arena was still too young. But the emperor only believed that since Arena had withstood his power, he held extraordinary expectations for her. Thus, he gave this newborn baby the name Leona. Before Arena could understand what was going on, she was carried back to the sleeping chamber by the servant. After everything that had just happened, Arena carefully recalled the sword in His Majesty's hand. It seemed to be made from the tentacles of a black dragon and the wings of the fairy queen. Unable to sort out these messy matters, Arena could only persuade herself not to overthink for now. But the servant whispered in her ear that Leona would choose her sword tomorrow and would thereafter be drawn into the terrifying struggle for succession. After hearing this, a bold speculation suddenly arose in Arena's heart. In her previous life, 20 years ago, as the witch Arena, she had fought the emperor of the Hazes Empire to the death. That emperor was the very old dragon Eskina's mentioned by the servant. At that time, a merchant group of the Hazes Empire had trespassed into Arena's territory without permission, and she had annihilated them along with their goods in an instant. But the cargo they were transporting happened to be a national treasure of the Hazes Empire, which enraged the king of Hazes Empire so much that he demanded Arena be buried with the treasure. In the end, Arena was unable to defeat him and could only transform into a mouse amid the chaos to escape. That king of the Hazes Empire was the previous emperor, the victor who had survived after fighting his way out among 38 children. In that case, was this king not the very same emperor before her now? At this thought, the servant told baby Arena to remember her new name. Her surname was Hazes, and her given name was Leona. Arena felt her scalp go numb. Against odds of 1 in hundreds of millions, she had actually reincarnated as the daughter of her mortal enemy. However, after careful thought, Arena realized that this body possessed 5-star spiritual power that had yet to awaken, which, for a witch, was instead an excellent opportunity to display her abilities. Arena decided that since she was the 12th born princess of the empire, she would fight to the very end. This little girl, not yet 1 year old, intended to take up a sword to eliminate her own siblings, and even force her father off the throne. To sit upon the emperor's seat herself, the servant carried the little princess into a grand hall filled with people. Leona sat obediently, waiting patiently. She secretly swore that she would use this body to become emperor and conquer the continent. At that moment, the servant signaled that Leona could begin choosing her sword. Leona blinked her wide, innocent eyes and looked around, only to discover that choosing a sword did not mean selecting a real weapon, but choosing, in the identity of a future emperor, a subordinate who would swear to follow her to the death. After understanding this, Leona's lips curled into a wicked smile, thinking, what's so hard about that? Among the densely packed crowd, she unhesitatingly pointed directly at a silver-haired woman. At this moment, a green-haired man, seeing the scene, muttered softly that he had not expected the little princess to choose her. Could it be that His Majesty had truly predicted it? It turned out that this green-haired man was the Emperor's aide, Herod, who had just discussed little Princess Leona with His Majesty the previous night. His Majesty had specifically instructed Herod to pay close attention to her. Herod had been full of confusion at the time, for the Emperor's eldest prince was an all-around genius, the second prince a rare ice mage, yet deliberately neglected, and the remaining princes all possessed special talents. Yet now the Emperor wanted him to keep an eye on Leona, who is not even 1 year old. He truly could not understand how strong she could possibly be. When Herod personally witnessed Leona choose Kiss, he could not help but sigh inwardly that His Majesty had indeed predicted it. At the same time, however, Leona's adorable appearance struck Herod hard, making him feel as though his heart could hardly endure it. While his thoughts wandered, he could not resist wanting to reach out and poke Leona's little cheek. At that moment, the aide's assistant timely expressed concern for Herod's condition, but Herod only felt that Leona was too cute, and was so overwhelmed by her adorableness that he fainted on the spot. Suddenly, everyone gasped in alarm and rushed to rescue the unconscious Herod, and this scene successfully caught Leona's attention. To her surprise, Herod had once crossed paths with Leona. Herod was an S-rank elite knight who had flattened 5 tribes within half a day and was known as the Knight of Destruction. He had also once trespassed into Leona's territory when she was a witch and had been severely taught a lesson by her. Recalling these past events, Leona looked at Herod now and could not help but sigh. He has indeed grown stronger. Humans grow so quickly. But what is this nonsense of smiling foolishly at me for a second and then fainting? Leona did not dwell on it, because her sword, the necromancer Kiss, had already come before her. Leona remembered that long ago in the deep mountains, she had heard the name Kiss. Kiss was a necromancer who could summon the undead. As long as there were corpses, he could continuously create an entire undead army. He had once single-handedly slain 20 flying dragons and turned them into undead mounts, and had even erased a kingdom that had attempted to assassinate him overnight. From these rumors alone, one could tell how terrifying he was. Though Leona had never truly fought him, this time, Leona felt she was simply heaven's chosen lucky one to have selected him at a glance. However, looking at the somewhat absent-minded Kiss before her, she thought he was probably similar to herself when she was a witch, living secluded in the mountains, which was why they had never encountered each other. Now that they had met, how would Kiss become Leona's sword? Yet, after returning to the sleeping chamber, the more Leona thought about it, the more something felt off. Why would such a powerful necromancer end up assigned to care for a child not yet 1 year old? With doubts in mind, Leona looked at the taciturn Kiss beside her and decided to first build a good relationship with him. So she extended her little hand in greeting. But when Kiss saw this, he actually retreated repeatedly. Leona instantly looked aggrieved, thinking, I didn't do anything. Why are you backing away? And Kiss simply did not understand what the child's outstretched hand meant. This left young, speechless Leona sweating with anxiety. At that moment, Kiss suddenly stepped forward and grabbed Leona's little hand. But he used too much strength, and Leona immediately cried out in pain. It hurts. Hearing the cries, the servant rushed in anxiously, asking what was wrong, and quickly told Kiss to release her hand. But Kiss felt that things were not so simple, and directly dragged a doctor over by his tie to examine Leona. Leona indicated that she did not even know this newcomer at all. The doctor politely introduced himself, saying his name was Baylor, and that he had come specifically to diagnose her. After hearing this, Leona was still full of confusion, thinking, don't I already have my own doctor? Why call you? But Baylor explained that Kiss rarely spoke, and since he had suddenly dragged him over to examine the princess, it must not be a trivial matter. In the next second, the doctor placed his hand on Leona's small hand, and suddenly, A dazzling and powerful surge of spiritual energy burst from his palm. The doctor was stunned on the spot and hurriedly asked the servant to summon the royal physician. That scene had also frightened Baylor himself. He clearly felt that the spiritual power inside Leona's body was running wild. Her exaggerated 5-star spiritual power was rampaging everywhere within her. He even suspected that someone had forcibly infused spiritual power into Leona's body, and if not treated promptly, it could be life-threatening. Leona merely wanted to roll her eyes. She was a fire attribute witch, and she had simply gotten overly excited thinking about becoming emperor. The people nearby were confused and began blindly speculating. Before long, Leona's personal physician arrived and carefully examined her, after which Leona finally fell asleep at ease. The physician stated that there was nothing serious and that she would recover after a few days of rest. At this moment, the anxious Kiss looked at the sleeping Leona and felt she was like a little rabbit, especially adorable. Thinking that she was so young yet possessed power far beyond ordinary people made her impossible to ignore. He could not resist reaching out to poke her little cheek. No one could resist such cuteness. Kiss silently swore in his heart that he would protect Leona until the end. The next day, Leona was awakened by the sound of things being moved. Originally, she should have lived peacefully in this chamber until the age of 5, but now that this still infant Leona had been acknowledged by her father, after choosing a guardian, she had to join the struggle for succession and move to another palace. Seeing Kiss standing there blankly again, and turning red every time he looked at her because he could not withstand her excessive cuteness, Leona was utterly confused and clearly unhappy. Seeing her dejected expression, the servant quickly brought a rattle to cheer her up, but Leona coldly thought that a dignified witch would never play with such childish toys. At that moment, the servant took out a worn rabbit doll, instantly attracting Leona's attention. Leona quickly sensed that the rabbit was continuously emitting dark attribute spiritual energy. She immediately declared that she liked it very much and hugged it tightly. She felt that the dark energy within the rabbit might help her in the future. After playing for a while, Leona hugged the rabbit doll and drifted off to sleep. Kiss then asked the servant about the doll's origin. The servant explained that the rabbit doll had accompanied the princess since childhood, and that princess was Leona's mother. The servant sighed that if the princess could see the scene now, she would surely be very happy. Only then did Kiss realize that Leona's mother had already passed away. At that moment, both the servant and Kiss looked at the sleeping Leona and felt she was especially pitiful, being drawn into the struggle for succession at such a young age. But the next day, the servant and Kiss brought Leona to her new residence, the Black Rose Palace. Legend had it that the Black Rose Palace was often haunted by the wronged spirits of deceased royals. Upon seeing the gloomy palace, Kiss immediately felt the emperor's arrangement was highly inappropriate. For such a small child to live here was too dangerous. But the servant said she had personally begged His Majesty to sign Leona here because it had been Leona's mother's dying wish. Kiss could only reluctantly agree. However, when they reached the eerie palace gates, a little boy who looked extremely similar to His Majesty suddenly blocked their path. At the sight of him, Leona immediately bared her teeth and scolded him in a flurry, telling him to get out of the way. "Didn't you hear me say move aside?" "What?" Of course. The little boy could not understand what baby Leona was saying, but he secretly thought viciously that if this little thing were a bit older, he could pin her to the ground in a second. Suddenly, the little boy carefully examined Leona and wondered if she was the 12th princess whom His Majesty and Herod had told him to pay special attention to. A few days earlier, Herod had confronted His Majesty about rumors that Leona's body had been forcibly infused with spiritual power. Was it the emperor's doing? But His Majesty said he had never heard of such a thing and would not use such a method to harm his own child. Once Leona chose her personal guardian and joined the succession struggle, her life and death would no longer concern the emperor. Everything would depend on how the other princes and princesses treated her. Herod found this difficult to accept, saying he could not bear to see such an adorable Leona drawn into the brutal succession war. The emperor then told Herod that he had already granted the Black Rose Palace to Leona. Upon hearing this, Herod's heart leapt to his throat, for he knew well that the palace still bore traces of the previous crown prince executing all royals who had renounced their claim. The location was remote and security weak. Leona was highly likely to be assassinated there. But the emperor only said that this was her fate. This made Herod feel the emperor was too cruel, and he fell out with him on the spot, deciding that from now on, he would personally protect Leona. This attitude instead made the emperor feel that Leona was truly extraordinary, for from birth, she already had both a necromancer and the imperial aide as heavyweight supporters. Meanwhile, the little boy had overheard the entire conversation. He decided to visit the Black Rose Palace to see what kind of person Leona was. If she was weak, he would strike first. But when he truly saw Leona, he found her as adorable as a little rabbit, and his killing intent vanished instantly, replaced by a complicated fondness. At this moment, Kiss immediately recognized the little boy. He was the 4th prince, Nigel. Kiss's heart tightened at once, feeling the 4th prince's presence posed a threat to Leona. The 4th prince flatly denied it, asking when he had ever threatened her. When the fourth prince saw the overwhelmingly cute Leona clutching that dirty rabbit doll tightly, he instantly switched into doting brother mode and wanted to give her a new doll as a gift. But the servant quickly explained that it was a relic left by Leona's mother. After hearing this, the fourth prince finally understood Leona's background and felt she was truly pitiful. Leona simply tilted her head innocently, having no idea what was going on. In the next second, the fourth prince gave Leona an extremely precious gift, the blessing of the sun god, then turned and left, saying he would visit her often. At this moment, Leona could already faintly sense that the sun god's blessing would greatly promote her growth and benefit her immensely. Even so, she still did not particularly like the fourth prince. And so, Leona lived in the Black Rose Palace. For 3 years, she had grown into a beautiful little royal princess, and her limbs and speech had become increasingly agile. But she had not expected that within the perilous royal household, a masked assassin would quietly appear outside her window, lurking there stealthily. However, Leona knew clearly that he could not enter because Kuss had already set up a barrier around the residence. At that moment, Leona was alone in the room, while the servant and Kuss were outside discussing the strange dream Leona had mentioned that morning. Leona had told the servant early that she dreamed many people had died, and in the end, she was the only one left alive. The servant's face changed drastically upon hearing this, and began sternly reprimanding Kuss outside the door, saying Leona was too young, and he should not summon undead in front of her so often, as it would cause nightmares. The masked assassin outside seized this moment, preparing to make a move against Leona. Who would have thought that in the next second, Leona herself walked to the window. Seeing this, the masked man felt it was prey delivered to his door. At this moment, Leona and the masked man locked eyes. She casually asked, "Are you very strong?" The assassin thought to himself that such a small girl surely had no combat ability and could be easily dealt with in the blink of an eye. But Leona curled her lips and said, "Then I won't hold back." The next second, she stretched out her small hand and released ice attribute magic toward the masked man. Before the masked man could react, his entire lower body was instantly frozen in place. Looking at her small hand, Leona sighed, saying that if she had her former strength, she could probably have sent him to his death in a single move. Then, she cast purple lightning magic, and the masked man instantly felt a searing pain, as if 100,000 volts of electricity were surging through him, suffering heavy injuries on the spot. But Leona did not stop there. Instead, as if she were playing, she cast healing magic on him again, making him lively one moment and on the verge of death the next. She forcibly treated the assassin like a toy to torment. Leona simply didn't want this masked man to die too quickly. Snap, crackle. The masked man widened his eyes, as if he saw what she was about to do next. In an instant, purple lightning illuminated the entire sky, and the masked man met his end in the northwest. At noon, Leona, who had intended to enjoy a nice nap, did not expect the fourth prince to come looking for her again. During these 3 years in the Black Rose Palace, almost every day, the fourth prince would come to visit Leona. Every time he came, he would pinch her cheeks with his little hands before feeling satisfied. This time, he disturbed her nap, putting Leona in a terrible mood, and she slapped away the fourth prince's hand. She complained dissatisfiedly that he came whenever he wanted and never had any real business. But the fourth prince suddenly said seriously that he liked Leona. Hearing this, Kuss, who was nearby, immediately chimed in, saying that he loved Leona. The fourth prince immediately retorted that he also loved her. The two of them began arguing endlessly over who loved Leona more, and the scene before her stirred up Leona's painful memories from many years ago. The 5-year-old girl before them had once accepted the injection of magical beast blood for the sake of the person she loved, then fled from reality and lived alone for 300 years. 300 years ago, Leona lived in the slums. A 5-year-old girl without parents. A wandering alchemist found her and gave her a small piece of bread and some milk. From then on, the orphan like Leona began following him. And so, every day Leona stayed by that man's side, for the first time feeling the happiness of being needed, until one day, the man patted Leona's head and told her, "I love you." Those words made Leona fall into a warm river of love on the spot, and she followed him without hesitation to his real residence. But the moment she stepped through the door, Leona was stunned by the scene before her. The house was filled with all kinds of little girls locked inside. It turned out the man had been trying to inject magic into humans to create the strongest destructive weapon. But he failed again and again, until he met Leona. The man thought her red hair and eyes were too special, firmly believing she possessed boundless magic within her. So he constantly coaxed her into becoming a test subject. And Leona, simply because she was afraid of being abandoned by the man, exhausted all her strength to endure repeated injections of magical beast blood. Even as her body festered, she gritted her teeth and did not utter a single word of complaint. But the experiment ultimately still ended in failure, and after enduring hellish torment, what Leona received was the man's ruthless abandonment. Her heart was torn completely into pieces. No one knows how much time passed before Leona woke up among ruins, and she remembered nothing. It turned out that during the time she had lost her memory, the experiment had succeeded. Leona had become the witch the man spoke of, and the ruins before her were everything she had personally destroyed. After understanding all this, she decided she would never again believe in anyone's love, and from then on lived in seclusion deep in the mountains for 300 years. Thinking of these things, Leona's mood gradually grew gloomy, and she coldly warned the two of them not to casually say "love me" in front of her again. Hearing this, the fourth prince, Enchantress, could only retreat to the side and whisper among themselves, thinking that perhaps because Leona's mother had passed away too early, she was so resistant to the idea of love. The fourth prince stepped forward again, gently touching Leona's face and solemnly promising her that even if he ascended the throne in the future, he would never kill Leona and would protect her forever. Kuss beside him made the same promise, that he would guard her forever. But Leona only responded indifferently that she would no longer believe anything anyone said. Just then, Leona suddenly sensed something unusual in the air currents. The fourth prince and Kuss reacted instantly, casting magic at the same time toward the window. A black-hatted, cloaked assassin fell to the ground on the spot. Looking at the corpse, the fourth prince felt that his magic just now had not been lethal, and he asked in confusion, "That strike just now shouldn't have killed him, right?" Aide Harriet suddenly appeared behind them, saying confidently that he had been the one to finish him off. All three of them could not help but feel puzzled. As His Majesty's aide, why did he have time to appear here, at Leona's place? Seeing this, Kuss immediately wanted to drive Harriet away, saying their little princess would be frightened by him. But when Harriet saw Leona, he was once again struck speechless by her cuteness and could only stammer incoherently at the side. After regaining his senses, he remembered his business and said he had come to inform the fourth prince that the Ice Master, the second prince, would be holding a birthday banquet tomorrow and the day after, and everyone who had received an invitation must attend. Upon hearing this, the fourth prince immediately asked, "Is Leona going too?" Harriet said that Leona was not on the invitation list. At this moment, Leona saw the fourth prince's face darken, and she grabbed his hand, shouting loudly that she also wanted to go to the birthday party and meet her brothers and sisters. But the fourth prince felt the second prince was practically a madman, and refused no matter what to let Leona go. Harriet also emphasized that this gathering was very dangerous and not suitable for her. But Leona thought that to defeat an enemy, one must first understand the enemy. And besides, with Kuss, the fourth prince, and Harriet protecting her now, it was a good opportunity to observe the enemy. Even if there was real danger, she would not be easily killed. No matter how dangerous this banquet might be, Leona had decided she would definitely go. The next day, Leona struck first and cast a sleep spell on Kuss, putting him into a deep slumber while she secretly slipped out of the palace alone, intending to go by herself. After leaving, she looked around and found no one for the moment, so she leaped lightly and cast a flight spell. But not long after taking off, she felt a wave of nausea, and she sighed helplessly that a human body was just too weak. A foal can run on its own not long after birth, yet she was already 3 years old and still unsteady on her feet. Thinking this, Leona casually wiped her nose, only for her snot to dangle into a long noodle of mucus. This frail body truly troubled her to no end, but there was no help for it. Kuss's sleep spell would only last an hour, and she had to reach the second prince's birthday banquet before he woke up. After flying for a short while, Leona arrived in front of a palace, only to realize she seemed to be lost. When she left, she hadn't looked at a map and now had no idea which way to go. There wasn't a single person in sight. She could only wander forward a few steps aimlessly before noticing a strange pattern made of small pebbles on the ground. Leona recognized it at a glance as a self-portrait of Father Emperor in his dragon form, but she did not like him because in her previous life, as the witch, Leona had personally destroyed a national treasure transported by Father Emperor's merchant guild. Father Emperor had therefore hunted her down like a madman for a long time. From then on, they had become mortal enemies. In this life, Leona had unexpectedly been reborn as his daughter, so she decided to properly beautify this portrait by changing it into an image of a bad dragon getting beaten. Taking a closer look, she discovered that there was actually a barrier in the surrounding air. Leona immediately recognized it as a protective barrier set by a mage of at least the 4th rank. It would trigger an alarm if touched, but she merely gave a wicked smile, thinking this level was nothing to her. With a gentle stretch of her small hand, she cast a spell, and in just a few moves, she dispelled the barrier. After slipping inside, Leona immediately began picking up small pebbles and enthusiastically making major alterations. But after placing only a few stones, a voice came from behind asking what she was doing. Leona blurted out that she was making a bad dragon getting beaten image. The next second, she looked up, and it was the bad dragon himself, Father Emperor, standing behind her. Caught red-handed in the act, Leona's mind went blank, not knowing what to do. At this moment, the bad dragon Father Emperor was only 0.01 meters away from her, so Leona instantly switched modes, and in the next second burst into laughter, awkwardly greeting Father Emperor. But Father Emperor remained silent, staring at her the whole time. This gradually made Leona feel uneasy, and she suddenly recalled that when she first met Father Emperor, he had stared at her just like this, and the next second injected spiritual power into her, causing her to cry out in pain. Leona felt flustered inside. Could it be that he's going to do something to me again? Just then, someone behind shouted, "Your Majesty." Leona saw that it was Aide Harriet and immediately waved at him with a fake cheerful greeting. But Harriet was also startled when he saw Leona, saying that the princess should be at the Black Rose Palace. So how had she run here? And her guard kiss was not by her side either. Leona honestly told him that she had sneaked out to attend the second prince's birthday banquet. Upon hearing this, Harriet immediately said he would find someone to send her back, firmly refusing to let her attend. At this moment, Father Emperor, who had been silent all along, pointed at Leona and asked Harriet who this little one was. Leona froze on the spot. Her biological father didn't recognize his own daughter? Harriet hurriedly explained that she was the 12th princess, His Majesty's own daughter, the princess who had been sent out early to choose a sword. But His Majesty looked indifferent, saying he had no impression at all. That single sentence nearly broke Leona's composure. Her own father didn't even recognize her. Only when His Majesty noticed Leona's special red eyes did he finally remember her and call out the name Leona. When Leona heard it, she clearly felt that every word from Father Emperor carried terrifying spiritual power, stronger than when they had first met. She thought to herself, "Is this a warning for me to behave obediently?" But Leona snorted coldly, feeling she would never possibly behave. So she put on a cute expression and forced a smile as she said, "Father finally remembers me." However, Father Emperor felt no ripple in his heart. This left Leona standing there awkwardly, her body gradually stiffening and her heart turning cold. She could not help recalling how in her previous life, she had been relentlessly hunted by His Majesty, and the oppressive feeling of being prey at that time was eerily similar to the scene before her now. Fortunately, Harriet beside them noticed Leona's predicament and quickly reminded her to try calling out Father Emperor, but because Leona had just been rejected by her own father, she still felt a little awkward inside, so she timidly called out Father. Harriet, standing nearby, instantly felt his heart melt when he heard it. Yet the Emperor remained expressionless. At that moment, Leona put on a coquettish expression and softly begged the Emperor to take her to the banquet with him. But the Emperor directly refused and turned to leave with Harriet. Unwilling to give up, Leona ran after them on her short little legs, chasing with all her might. Suddenly, she failed to notice a small stone under her feet, and with a thud, she fell flat onto the ground, her calf instantly scraped and bleeding. She had no choice but to pitifully pick herself up. Seeing this, Harriet immediately ran over, ready to carry Leona to see a doctor. But Leona insisted it wasn't necessary, and still stubbornly demanded to go to the banquet. At that moment, the Emperor finally turned around and asked Leona if her leg didn't hurt. Leona felt a surge of joy inside. Is he concerned about me? She then thought that if she stubbornly claimed it didn't hurt, she might appear brave. So, she said seriously that the servants had taught her she could only say it hurt when it was extremely, extremely painful. That single sentence seemed to strike a hidden corner deep within the Emperor's heart. The next second, he lifted Leona up in one swift motion, looked her over from side to side, and asked her how the barrier in front of the pebbles had been removed. Leona froze on the spot, thinking she must not give herself away, so she played dumb while rapidly thinking of how to muddle through. Tilting her head innocently, she asked, "What is a barrier?" But the Emperor continued pressing her, referring to the barrier by the stone path. Leona could only stubbornly insist that she knew nothing at all. A trace of suspicion flashed through the Emperor's eyes, and the corners of his mouth lifted slightly as he set Leona back on the ground, seemingly having already noticed that she was lying. However, he still agreed to let Leona attend the birthday banquet. But Leona grabbed the hem of His Majesty's clothes again, acting spoiled as she said her leg hurt and she wanted to be carried. The Emperor's expression immediately darkened as he glared at her coldly. Yet Leona simply held up her little hands obediently, wearing a waiting for a hug expression. Seeing that His Majesty remained unmoved, Harriet had no choice but to volunteer to carry Leona. But Leona refused to let Harriet carry her, and stubbornly shouted, "If you don't carry me, I won't go." This made Harriet realize that perhaps what Leona truly longed for was her father's embrace. She continued holding up her little hands, standing there, her calves already beginning to tremble slightly. At last, the Emperor relented and picked Leona up into his arms. Nestled in her father's embrace, Leona smugly declared in her heart that she had won. Harriet, standing to the side, also revealed a relieved smile. Meanwhile, the servants were busy meticulously preparing the venue for the second prince's birthday banquet. But every one of them appeared extremely nervous, afraid that even the slightest mistake in arranging the tableware would cost them their lives at the hands of the second prince. Suddenly, the second prince appeared. Seeing that the knives and forks on the table were slightly crooked, he immediately began scolding the servants, questioning whether they hadn't been told to arrange everything neatly. The servants hurriedly explained in terror that perhaps the wind had just blown them out of place, and they would fix it immediately. A murderous glint flashed in the second prince's eyes as he coldly told them, "A mouth is not for making excuses." Just then, the fourth prince stepped in to ease the situation for the servants, saying that today was his brother's birthday, an auspicious day, so there was no need for a massacre. After speaking, he told the servants to withdraw, but the second prince called them back, saying the matter wasn't over yet. The servants trembled in fear. The two princes' gazes met, silently competing with each other. The fourth prince coldly stated that father would not want to see blood and flesh scattered about. The second prince's eyes grew even colder. After hesitating for a moment, he finally suppressed his anger and spared the servants. However, in the next second, the two of them almost simultaneously released their spiritual power, intending to eliminate each other on the spot. His Majesty, the Emperor. A loud announcement suddenly came from the distance. The Emperor had arrived. The two of them looked up and froze on the spot. In His Majesty's arms, he was actually holding little Leona. Just how cold-blooded was this father? His own children had nearly fought to the death before his eyes, yet he hadn't even bothered to blink. And that brother, upon seeing that his younger sister seemed to be gradually gaining their father's favor, his first reaction was to send out assassins. Held steadily in her father's arms, Leona, on the way to the second prince's birthday banquet, suddenly sensed fluctuations in spiritual power around her. Realizing that a battle seemed to have broken out over there, she thought to herself that if one side was the fourth prince, then the other was most likely the second prince. Leona had long heard that the second prince, like His Majesty, possessed rare ice element magic. She instantly couldn't wait to crane her neck to witness the second prince's combat strength with her own eyes. But Harriet quickly raised a hand to block her view, covering her little face, advising that children shouldn't watch such scenes and should avoid them. The Emperor likewise forbade her from turning her head to look. This made Leona feel they were underestimating her, when in fact her strength was far greater than they imagined. After arriving at the banquet venue, the fourth prince ran over nervously and stared at Leona in their father's arms, blurting out, "Why are you holding Leona? Could it be that father plans to kill her himself?" Harriet, standing nearby, nearly burst out laughing at this. The fourth prince, however, looked completely confused, not knowing what he had said wrong. His Majesty did not answer the fourth prince's question, while the second prince stepped forward and invited His Majesty to take a seat. His Majesty looked down at Leona in his arms and felt it was time to put her down. But Leona thought to herself, if she were suddenly released from such a height, how could she land gracefully? His Majesty, however, only believed that he must treat all his children equally and not favor anyone. So, he simply tossed Leona down. After landing, Leona shot her father a look of accusation, complaining inwardly. Couldn't he have set her down more gently? However, facing all the siblings gathered at the banquet, Leona quickly switched back into coquettish mode, saying she didn't want to be separated from Daddy and wanted him to carry her again next time. The Emperor casually reached out and poked her little cheek. Everyone present was so shocked by the scene before them that they were speechless. But seeing this situation, the second prince immediately felt doubtful. Why would father indulge and dote on this little girl so much? What was so special about this little girl? In an instant, killing intent rose within him toward Leona, and he planned to have Leona die here today, putting an end to father's indulgence of her, thinking that father never interfered in the struggle for succession, and would not even blink if he watched his own children die before him. However, the second prince had long prepared thoroughly for today's birthday banquet, so killing one more Leona made no difference. Soon, everyone took their seats, but Leona picked up the fork on the table and examined it carefully, thinking, is this silver? If I sold it, it would surely fetch a good price. She even tapped it against the table to confirm the material. Seeing this, the second prince was startled. Could it be that Leona had already discovered that the fork had been coated with poison, and that once tapped, it would cause spiritual power to drain? At that moment, the fork had already begun to turn black, but Leona had noticed nothing. Yet the second prince became even more convinced that she had realized it. The next second, Leona felt hungry and wanted to eat the apple on the table, but accidentally, the apple slipped from her hand and fell to the ground. This made the second prince furious, and he abruptly stood up and slammed the table, shouting that even the poisoned apple he had prepared had been discovered. He then blew a whistle, and instantly several powerful masked assassins leapt out from behind, beginning to slaughter the siblings attending the banquet. At this moment, the ruthless second prince thought, if he killed the father's favored Leona first, perhaps he could gain father's approval. He immediately gave the order for the assassins to kill Leona first. At this time, father had long sensed that many assassins were lying in ambush here, and he rose and pulled Leona into his arms, telling the second prince that Leona's sword was not by her side, and thus she could not participate in the struggle for succession. The second prince was shocked upon hearing this, realizing his own oversight. He had forgotten that before reaching adulthood, anyone without their guard present could not participate in the struggle for succession. Upon learning this, Leona suddenly thought of the fourth prince. At that moment, the fourth prince was being firmly pinned to the ground by an assassin. Leona wanted her father to take action and save the fourth prince, but His Majesty remained unmoved, not even blinking. Harriet, standing nearby, calmly stated that no one could interfere in the struggle for succession. Leona pointed out that Daddy had clearly saved her just now. Harriet told Leona that was because her guard was not by her side. But Leona said the fourth prince's guard was not by his side either. She turned her head to look at the corpse nearby. It turned out the fourth prince's guard had already died earlier. At this moment, the fourth prince had unleashed his ultimate sun god's spiritual power, intending to perish together with the second prince. The second prince also summoned a sky full of ice magic arrows, aiming them at him. Suddenly, Leona released a powerful red magic fireball, instantly knocking both of them to the ground at the same time. The assassins nearby were also annihilated in an instant. Everyone was completely dumbfounded, their gazes uniformly falling upon Leona. It turned out that Leona had merely thought that the fourth prince would be, in the future, one of the important figures in building her own personal power, and thus could not die here now. She had originally intended to use a level 1 spell to provide cover for the fourth prince, so he could escape. Unexpectedly, she had accidentally used a level 3 spell instead. Now, as everyone stared at the embarrassed Leona, she had no way to explain herself at all. However, the next day, when Leona returned to her own palace, a boy suddenly appeared in the distance shouting her name. But Leona didn't hear him at all, and the boy assumed she was deliberately ignoring him. He then stepped forward and slapped Leona on her little head, and after doing so, began mocking her. You used a level 3 spell to save the fourth prince? What kind of proper magic could a 3-year-old brat possibly use? As a mage myself, I can't even use level 3 magic yet. After speaking, he rudely yanked at Leona's shoulder again. If he killed Leona right now, then he would become the strongest mage in the entire royal family. But Leona turned around coldly, wanting to see who had such audacity as to dare strike the great witch herself. Leona directly raised her hand and released purple magic at the boy, who cried out in pain and began struggling frantically, instantly knocked down to the ground on his backside. After striking him, Leona casually snapped her fingers, telling the boy not to bother her again in the future. The boy, however, looked unwilling to accept this, feeling that Leona was simply too arrogant. He then channeled his spiritual power and released magical flames, wanting to burn Leona alive on the spot. Yet Leona didn't take him seriously at all, and with a gentle point of her little finger, released a faint trace of spiritual power, instantly causing it to neutralize the magical flames he had just released. The boy was stunned by the scene before him. He had never seen magic used like that. At that moment, Leona decided to show him what true magical flames really were. In an instant, overwhelming fire element magic appeared behind Leona, fiercely pouring toward him. Upon seeing this, the boy was so frightened that he collapsed onto the ground again and wet his pants. Afterward, Leona glanced at the scene before her and felt that since he was already scared like this, there was no need to stoop to the level of a child any further. Suddenly, Leona sensed her father's spiritual power approaching through the air. In the next second, Leona actually slapped herself hard across the face. Then she threw herself into the arms of her father, who had suddenly appeared, and pointed at the boy, complaining, "Dad, he hit me." Then she looked up at her father, deliberately putting on a pitiful expression. Seeing this, her father's mind began rapidly reconstructing the scene, guessing what had just happened. And the boy on the ground was the 8th prince. Her father had long known that the 8th prince was very weak. This made her father suspicious of Leona, and he began to wonder why Leona was hiding her strength. Could it be that she wanted to gain his attention and care? Her father suddenly remembered that Harriet had once come to see him, saying that Leona especially longed for her father's affection. Thinking of this, her father picked Leona up in his arms and began to scold the 8th prince on the ground, admonishing him for disobeying orders. Without guards present, private fighting was not allowed. Unexpectedly, Leona in his arms spoke up, saying that if someone makes a mistake, they should be punished. How could a few casual words be enough? After hearing this, her father smiled gently and immediately decided to confine the 8th prince to his palace for 1 week, forbidding him from stepping out even half a step. However, the 8th prince on the ground felt that he was clearly the one being bullied, so why was he the one punished in the end? But the 8th prince could not refute his father's words. Afterward, her father carried Leona to a palace, where a sinister-looking man was standing, waiting for Leona. As soon as the man saw Leona, their eyes met, and he immediately told her father that Leona's abilities were very suitable for becoming his disciple. But before Leona could speak, Leona and her father were instantly frozen in place, and everything around them was stilled by the man. The man began interrogating Leona about who she really was, but Leona only replied indifferently that she was the little imperial princess. Who else could she be? At that moment, the man held Leona's small hand and whispered, "So are you 300 years old or 3? This made Leona's heart tremble. Even her biological father did not know her true identity. So, who exactly was this man? The sinister man before her actually did not even take the powerful dragon emperor seriously, and even declared that he would become the teacher of a 300-year-old witch. Because Leona had exposed her magic at the birthday banquet, her father ordered Harriet to invite Gyros, known as the Master of the Western Magic Tower, to test Leona's magical power. But when the Magic Tower Master saw Leona, he immediately saw through the strangeness of her soul, realizing that her soul was merely attached to the little princess's body. At this moment, Leona also wanted to know what kind of background this man had. In the next second, the Magic Tower Master actually cast a time-stopping spell, freezing His Majesty and the aid in place instantly. Then, he warned Leona that if she was willing to join hands with him, he could ensure that she would become the strongest existence in the royal family in the future. Leona remained silent for a moment, then suddenly grabbed the Magic Tower Master's hand. This action made the Magic Tower Master think that Leona had made a wise choice. Unexpectedly, Leona released electric spark magic into his hand, instantly shocking it with intense pain, white smoke rising from the back of his hand. Then, Leona unleashed powerful spiritual energy, completely shattering the wall of time-stopping magic he had just set up. After this series of actions, Leona's small body could not withstand such immense spiritual power consumption and began curling up in pain in her father's arms. As the time-stopping spell was lifted, her father and Herod immediately regained movement, releasing an anger so intense it nearly tore through the air, and demanded to know what the Magic Tower Master had done to Leona. But the Magic Tower Master flatly denied everything, merely urging His Majesty to withdraw his power quickly. Otherwise, the little princess might truly lose her life. It turned out that her father's overwhelming rage had not intimidated the Magic Tower Master, but instead had nearly suffocated Leona under its pressure. Seeing this, her father forcibly withdrew his aura. At this moment, the Magic Tower Master told His Majesty that the little princess's control over her magic was somewhat poor, and that he was very willing to help train Leona. Upon hearing this, Leona immediately refused on the spot, telling her father that she did not like this man, and if necessary, she could rely on the guard kiss instead. However, the Magic Tower Master coldly threatened Leona that if she refused him, he would reveal all of her soul's secrets to His Majesty. After hearing this, Leona felt that she had no other choice for now but to agree to his conditions, and so, Leona outwardly complied with his intentions, and the Magic Tower Master officially became Leona's teacher. Leaning on the balcony, Leona repeatedly pondered the Magic Tower Master's identity. Suddenly, he appeared silently behind her, startling Leona, who asked him his purpose for coming. But the Magic Tower Master only said that he simply wanted to know the little princess's true identity. Leona clearly stated that she would not tell him, nor would she let him know the truth. Suddenly, Kus rushed out from inside with a sword and a fierce expression, instantly launching a spiritual sword technique at the Magic Tower Master. With a swift leap, the Magic Tower Master easily dodged Kus's slash, and even caught the flying dagger with one hand. At this moment, he coldly warned Kus that if he made another move, he would not show mercy. Leona then spoke harshly to stop them both, saying that even without Kus, she could completely kill the Magic Tower Master herself. Hearing this, the Magic Tower Master revealed a sinister smile, thinking that although Leona was young, her tone was anything but small. He left behind only one sentence: "You don't like me this time, but there will be plenty of chances for us to meet again." After saying that, he turned and left. But as soon as he left, Kus immediately began questioning Leona about his identity, and Leona told Kus that he was the teacher her father had found for her. Kus was so shocked that he could hardly believe it and told Leona that the Magic Tower Master's power was even more terrifying than that of His Majesty the Emperor, and that this man was named Gyros, who had once annihilated tens of thousands of enemy troops single-handedly in a battle on the Hellier Plains. Only then did Leona understand why the Magic Tower Master did not take her father seriously and could even cast time-stopping magic at will. But Kus suddenly promised Leona that the next time he saw the Magic Tower Master, he would personally kill him with his own hands. At this time, Leona was troubled by her magic training and suddenly remembered. If Lakis had not betrayed her in her previous life, her soul would not have been forced to attach to this petite body. She immediately swore to herself that within 10 years, she would personally kill Lakis. But Leona also knew clearly that although she now had 5-star spiritual power, her body had not fully developed, and she had to find a way to make her spiritual power grow faster. Suddenly, Leona saw the second prince being turned away at the door, and had a sudden idea. Since the second prince was a mage, perhaps she could use him for practice to improve her spiritual power. So Leona walked to the door and told the second prince that he had come at the perfect time, inviting him to fight her. But the second prince said he was not here to fight. He had simply come to deliver a luxurious afternoon tea to Leona, and said that this would be the last time he brought her a gift, as he would not be able to come again in the future. Leona was very puzzled after hearing this. Why would it be the last time? The second prince told Leona that he was already 12 years old, and according to royal rules, once one turns 12, they must leave the palace for training. Just like the first prince, Rodri, who had been sent north to participate in the war against magical beasts. Only then did Leona understand why she had never seen the first prince around. But Leona still insisted on fighting the second prince, and told him that the guards were present this time, so there was no need to worry about accidents. They could fight freely. However, the second prince felt that Leona was only a 3-year-old child. Her strength was too weak, and he did not want to bully his younger sister. At this moment, Leona began to provoke the second prince with taunts, asking him what would happen if she won. After thinking for a moment, the second prince said he could grant Leona one wish. And so, Leona's provocation worked successfully, and the two of them went together to the dueling ground. At first, the second prince even intended to hold back and go easy on his weak little sister, but unexpectedly, Leona dashed straight toward him, using distortion magic, and slashed a bloody wound across his arm. The second prince hurriedly retreated, shocked, feeling that he had underestimated Leona. Immediately after, Leona cast the spell Heaven and Earth Shatter, instantly causing the dueling ground to crack apart, stones flying up and sweeping toward the second prince. At this moment, the second prince quickly cast a freezing spear in counterattack. Leona then released blazing magical flames, which collided fiercely midair with the second prince's ice spear, instantly triggering a massive explosion. The second prince failed to dodge in time and was burned on the arm by the magical flames swept up in the explosion. At this point, he could already feel his stamina rapidly draining, so he tried to use mist magic as cover, while simultaneously casting ice magic beneath his feet, intending to freeze Leona's legs. But all of this was blocked by the wall of magical fire Leona raised, and she leaped into the air, easily avoiding all the attacks. At this moment, the second prince was on the verge of completely losing his fighting spirit. Leona proudly flew into the air, looking down at him and warning that he had already lost to her. The second prince looked at his hands, burned by magic and covered in blisters, and vaguely realized that he no longer had any chance of victory. But how could Leona use such powerful magic? However, after Leona landed, she snapped her fingers and directly declared that from now on, the second prince would become her subordinate. The second prince was stunned upon hearing this. How had he become his sister's subordinate? But Leona stated that the loser should serve the victor. Hearing this, the second prince fell silent for a moment, then felt that it indeed made sense. Since his sister had not killed him, becoming her subordinate was only natural. After taking the second prince as her subordinate, Leona immediately began assigning him a task, drawing a pattern on the ground, and instructing him to go to the place marked on the drawing. At first, the second prince did not recognize it, but upon closer look, he realized it was a map of the kingdom of Corel. It turned out that Leona wanted the second prince to investigate the king of that country. The second prince suddenly felt that Leona, like the other royal siblings, was cold-blooded and intended to use his hand to kill the king of Corel first, and that after the king was killed, he himself would die on the battlefield as well. After analyzing it this way, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that Leona was using him to kill with a borrowed knife. Hearing this, Leona was speechless, feeling that the second prince was thinking too darkly of her. She had only asked him to conduct a simple investigation of the king's intelligence, and she clearly told the second prince that the king must be killed by her personally. At this moment, still filled with doubt, the second prince curiously asked Leona why she cared so much about that king. Leona did not answer him, but instead reprimanded the second prince first, saying that a subordinate should obey orders and not ask unnecessary questions. If he was unwilling, they could fight again. Only then did the second prince truly realize that the task was not sending him to his death, and instead felt that Leona was unexpectedly generous, able to treat him, a defeated opponent, as one of her own. After saying that, the second prince's gaze became sincere, and he stated that he would complete this mission perfectly. The next day, the fourth prince, who had been injured at the birthday banquet, had been lying in the palace recovering and gradually felt bored, thinking that Leona had once stepped in to save him. He wanted to personally thank her properly, but at that moment, the second prince suddenly blasted open the barrier of the fourth prince's palace with magic, and after barging in, began boasting proudly, telling the fourth prince that he had already become Leona's subordinate. However, the fourth prince had no idea what was going on. The Leona he had been talking about did not come. Instead, a crazed second prince showed up, leaving him completely confused. After only a few words, the two of them instantly began fighting. Meanwhile, the master of the magic tower was feeling utterly bored inside the palace, and began complaining that he was already tired of killing magical beasts, and that the mages under his command were useless and offered no challenge at all. He wanted to find something interesting to do, and suddenly thought of Leona again. He felt that Leona was extraordinarily gifted, not only exceptionally talented, but also possessing an extremely special soul. And unlike other dragon girls, who merely attach their souls to others purely for amusement, the particularly dark aura surrounding her fascinated him more and more the longer he thought about it. At that moment, he suddenly heard footsteps coming from outside, but the one who pushed the door open and entered was King Corel. Meanwhile, Leona planned to make a trip to the library to investigate exactly how long her soul had been dead. On the way, however, Leona noticed that Kuss was either deliberately avoiding her or desperately averting his gaze, which prompted Leona to directly ask him whether something was wrong. But Kuss stammered and could not bring himself to speak, feeling sullen inside, thinking that as Leona's subordinate. Ever since the second prince appeared, he had gradually grown distant from her and was no longer as close. Leona, however, seriously told Kuss that so-called subordinates were merely her slaves, people to be used by her. But Kuss was different. He was her guard, her own person, and when necessary, she would protect him as well, because Kuss was Her Highness, the princess's person. These words made Kuss instantly overjoyed, and he became even more convinced that he had already become Leona's king of the torch. In the library, Leona found a history book. She discovered that it had been exactly 5 years since her death in her previous life. However, Leona calmed herself and pondered carefully. 5 years was long enough. That King Karel Lakis, who had betrayed her, must have grown considerably as well. It seemed that her original plan for revenge had to be completely overturned and redrawn. Now, that once insignificant subordinate, the second prince, as well as the fourth prince, and her personal guard Kuss, had all been brought under Leona's command. Those who once seemed sincerely close to Leona had in fact all fallen into the chessboard she had meticulously laid out. At present, the only ones still difficult to approach were His Majesty and that wicked man, the master of the magic tower, who had not yet been included within Leona's plans. Just as she thought of this, the master of the magic tower appeared silently behind Leona as if summoned by name. However, this time Leona struck first, directly casting magic to tightly lock around his neck, because Leona clearly smelled that on the master of the magic tower there was actually Lakis' scent. Who would have thought that a man over 200 years old would kneel before a 3-year-old little girl and call her elder sister? Leona, who had been secretly planning revenge in the library, was startled by the sudden appearance of the master of the magic tower behind her, lost her footing, and accidentally fell from the tall ladder. Seeing this, the master of the magic tower took the opportunity to catch her small body in his arms. Yet Leona's face was full of disgust as she sternly warned him to remove his filthy hands at once. She told him not to always appear and disappear so mysteriously. But the master of the magic tower felt wronged inside, thinking that he had clearly just saved her life. So why was she so ungrateful? At that moment, Leona suddenly caught a familiar scent from him, the scent of Lakis, the enemy who had betrayed her. She instantly made her move. Magical chains shot out from the void and tightly wrapped around the master of the magic tower's neck. Then she angrily questioned him, asking whether before coming here, he had touched some dog. But the master of the magic tower had no idea what was happening and simply looked bewildered. Leona's memory, however, had already been stirred. That sword which had pierced through her heart was precisely the sword of wind of the little Prince Lakis, who had claimed to love her, yet personally betrayed her. And the scent on that sword, the one she would never forget for the rest of her life, at this moment was exactly the same as the scent on the master of the magic tower. This made Leona suddenly realize that she had acted rashly just now and been too impulsive. She had to immediately find a reasonable excuse to cover up her loss of composure. Unexpectedly, however, the master of the magic tower took the initiative to admit fault. He honestly told Leona that he had encountered a particularly cute little dog on the road earlier and couldn't resist playing with it for a while. He said he had no idea that Leona was allergic to dog fur. Seizing the opportunity, Leona quickly urged him to change his clothes, saying he still dared to come see her covered in dog fur. As she spoke, she even deliberately pretended to sneeze. Seeing this, the master of the magic tower simply waved his hand lightly and instantly cast a transformation spell. In the blink of an eye, his outfit changed from a wicked gentleman's attire into a pristine white little prince's outfit. Leona's eyes lit up at the sight, and she immediately became interested, wanting him to teach her this unbelievably cool transformation magic as well. But the master of the magic tower seriously stated that such a stylish skill would never be easily passed on. These words angered Leona, and she immediately opened her mouth and called him a little trash. Not only did the master of the magic tower not get angry, he actually looked as if he was enjoying it and rather liked being scolded by Leona. Afterward, the master of the magic tower suddenly noticed the book Leona had been reading and discovered it was a history book about the kingdom of Karel. Going along with it, Leona inquired about the current situation of that country. But the master of the magic tower said he had not been to that country, only met a person from there, and that person he had previously met was Leona's faithless lover, Lakis. Leona had already vaguely grasped the truth in her heart, so she feigned confusion and continued to question him. Exactly whom had he met? Her questioning gradually aroused suspicion in the master of the magic tower, who felt that Leona's curiosity about the kingdom of Karel was a bit excessive. So he turned the question back on her, asking why she cared so much about the affairs of the kingdom of Karel. Leona could only stammer in concealment, saying that since she intended to become emperor in the future, she had to first understand the power distribution of other nations. But the master of the magic tower was not convinced. He said there were clearly many other countries to study. So, why was she uniquely interested in the kingdom of Karel? Leona could only say seriously that the kingdom of Karel had developed rapidly in such a short time, and there must be some hidden secret behind it. However, The master of the magic tower did not continue along her line of conversation, instead pondering which side he should support to make things more interesting. Upon hearing this, Leona immediately grew anxious. She directly grabbed the master of the magic tower by the collar and loudly scolded him that he must stand on her side or else wait for death. But the master of the magic tower calmly analyzed that Leona was only 3 years old and had no economic strength to support a national-level power struggle. After all, intervening in wars between nations required burning a great deal of money. After hearing this, not only did Leona not get angry, she covered her mouth and laughed softly. She proudly told him that she now had so much money she could not possibly spend it all. The master of the magic tower immediately expressed doubt, thinking she was boasting. The next second, Leona lightly waved her small hand. With a clattering sound, gold coins poured down from the sky, golden light scattering everywhere, piling up like a small mountain at the master of the magic tower's feet. The master of the magic tower was instantly stunned, bent down to pick up a gold coin, and examined it repeatedly. Then he flung off his cloak and dropped to his knees with a thud before Leona, who stood on the ladder as if wrapped in golden light. He respectfully asked whether she would be willing to take him, a 200-year-old man, as her underling. He solemnly declared that he would certainly devote all his strength to her. At that moment, Leona's lips curved slightly, revealing a sinister smile like that of a gang leader. In order to make the master of the magic tower show his loyalty, Leona demanded on the spot that he swear with all the spiritual power he possessed as a mage. But the master of the magic tower knew that spiritual power was a mage's life. No matter how greedy he was, he could not joke with his own life. Leona unhappily pouted, then raised a finger and generously announced the gold payment would be doubled. Upon hearing the words doubled, the master of the magic tower's expression changed faster than flipping a page, and he immediately told Leona to state the oath. Thus, Leona presented her demands one by one. First, the master of the magic tower must never tell anyone the secret of a soul attaching to dragon blood. The master of the magic tower agreed, without hesitation. Second, before Leona became emperor, the master of the magic tower was not to leave her line of sight and must be at her beck and call. Hearing this requirement, his expression instantly turned into that of a qualified bootlicker, which perfectly suited his wish to see Leona every day. However, the third requirement was that Leona wanted him to continue maintaining the current pretend alliance with King Corel. The moment this condition was spoken, the master of the magic tower immediately showed reluctance, feeling that as the dignified master of the magic tower, how could he do such spy work? As a result, Leona added calmly, "Then I will give you more money." No sooner had she finished speaking than his expression made a complete 180-degree turn, and he immediately declared that status meant nothing, making money was the true king, eagerly agreeing to all of Leona's conditions. Next, the master of the magic tower asked about the duration of the oath. Leona thought for a moment and decided to set the term until she became an adult at 18. The master of the magic tower was stunned upon hearing this, having thought it would be for a lifetime. But since it only lasted until 18, he accepted everything on the spot. The next second, the master of the magic tower spread open his palm, and purple contract magic surged from his hand, slowly floating onto the back of Leona's hand and forming a black magical mark. Thus, the master of the magic tower formally bound himself to the promise he had made to Leona. Taking advantage of the atmosphere before it cooled, Leona immediately asked him about the current movements of the kingdom of Corel. The master of the magic tower told her that the kingdom of Corel only had designs on the southern mountain range for now, and would not temporarily pose a threat to the Hazes Empire where Leona resided. After hearing this, Leona pondered for a moment and suddenly recalled that the southern mountain range was precisely the territory she had ruled as a witch in her previous life. Her emotions instantly surged, and she told the master of the magic tower that there was a very powerful witch in the south. But the master of the magic tower was indifferent, thinking there was nothing strange about a witch. Besides, the kingdom of Corel had always publicly claimed that the witch had long been personally killed by their king. These words once again ignited the anger in Leona's chest, and she once more remembered the betrayal of that faithless man. She secretly swore in her heart that in this life, she would ascend the throne and personally behead the king of the kingdom of Corel, Lakis. Thinking of this, a sinister smile curved on Leona's lips, and she turned to ask the master of the magic tower whether the agreement they had just signed was already in effect and irrevocable. The master of the magic tower nodded, saying that since the contract had been formed, it naturally could not be revoked. Leona suddenly said in a strange tone that those gold coins were actually not hers. Before the master of the magic tower could react, Leona leisurely added that the money all belonged to her father. If the master of the magic tower dared to appropriate it privately, her father would certainly not let him off easily. This series of moves instantly sent the master of the magic tower from heaven to hell, filling his heart with deep despair. Yet Leona looked completely justified and said she would pay him a monthly salary in the future. The master of the magic tower felt his heart grow cold and still wanted to continue discussing the matter of compensation with Leona. But Leona directly activated distorted flash magic and vanished from the library on the spot. By the time the master of the magic tower reacted, he realized he had been thoroughly played by a 3-year-old little girl, and his face turned green with anger. The triumphant Leona took the opportunity to use magic to leave the library, leaving the master of the magic tower alone, gnashing his teeth in place. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became, feeling that as a dignified mage, he only had one chance in his life to form a magical contract, and it had been wasted on that little girl Leona. Serves him right. If other mages found out, they would laugh at him for a lifetime. The master of the magic tower could not help but sigh inwardly that it was all money's fault. But when he lowered his head to look at the gold coins in his hand, he could not help but feel that Leona was truly mysterious. How could she have so much money from the Hazes Empire? Perhaps in her previous life, between Leona and Eskina, the king of the Hazes Empire, there had been some unknown connection. At that moment, footsteps suddenly sounded behind the master of the magic tower, and the 8 quietly appeared. He questioned the master of the magic tower, asking why he was here, and whether he intended to approach Leona with ulterior motives. The master of the magic tower lazily replied that he simply felt that the little girl Leona had great research value. Unexpectedly, these words were clearly heard by His Majesty the Emperor, who had suddenly appeared behind them. Seeing His Majesty, the master of the magic tower was startled, for he had not sensed any spiritual aura released as the emperor approached. The emperor coldly told the master of the magic tower to continue explaining the so-called research value he had just mentioned. The master of the magic tower spread his hands and said that such information required negotiating compensation first. Seeing his attitude, the emperor directly stated that he could give him a large batch of spirit gemstones. Once again blinded by money, the master of the magic tower nodded on the spot. But just as the words reached his lips, he suddenly remembered that he had signed a spiritual contract with Leona and could not reveal the secret of Leona's soul to anyone. So he had no choice but to fabricate a statement, claiming that Leona was likely a descendant of the dragon race. These words stunned both the emperor and Herod. Herod softly reminded them that according to rumors, it had been a full 300 years since a descendant of the dragon race had appeared. Even the emperor himself was not of dragon blood, so the appearance of dragon blood in Leona seemed somewhat unreasonable. But the master of the magic tower said that none of this had been conclusively verified, only that he knew that at merely 3 years old, Leona already possessed 5-star spiritual power. After hearing this, however, the emperor began to suspect that the master of the magic tower had ulterior motives, wondering why he would voluntarily reveal such important information. The master of the magic tower could only awkwardly explain that he was now Leona's teacher and stood on the same side as the emperor. But the emperor coldly warned him that he would never form an alliance with someone who had dealings with the kingdom of Corel. Clearly, the emperor already knew about the master of the magic tower's recent meeting with Lakis. The master of the magic tower froze there and awkwardly admitted that he had done so merely for money. But in the emperor's eyes, colluding with a foreign power had already posed a threat to the Hazes Empire. Before the words were even finished, powerful spiritual energy erupted from both of them at the same time, and in the blink of an eye, the surrounding air was already filled with a heavy killing intent. Just then, Herod, who was standing nearby, suddenly spoke up to interrupt the two of them, reminding them that this was Princess Leona's favorite library, and if they damaged it, neither of them would be able to explain it to her later. His Majesty and the master of the magic tower looked at each other for a moment, and after some thought, gradually withdrew their respective spiritual powers. However, His Majesty was still uneasy and coldly warned the master of the magic tower that if he dared to do anything that endangered the empire, he would show no mercy. The master of the magic tower merely said with a grin that he would definitely prevent such a situation from happening. His Majesty only glared at him coldly, then turned and left with a sharp, imposing aura. At that moment, the master of the magic tower shouted at His Majesty's retreating figure that if he was rude to the princess's teacher again in the future, there would be consequences. The next day, the fourth prince took the initiative to come over, wanting a clear explanation as to why Leona had accepted the second prince as her subordinate. But Leona was sleeping soundly and was forcibly woken up by the fourth prince, her face full of drowsiness from just waking up, completely uninterested in him. The fourth prince, however, seriously reminded her that the second prince did not like her at all and even harbored killing intent toward her. Leona replied indifferently that the second prince had merely lost a duel to her, which was why he became her little subordinate. After hearing this, the fourth prince became even more serious. He said that he was clearly weaker than the second prince, so could he also become Leona's little follower? He solemnly promised that he would never betray Leona, and even if he ascended the throne in the future, he would never harm her. Looking at the fourth prince before her, a question could not help but surface in Leona's heart. In the future, in the struggle for the throne. Would she personally kill the person standing before her? Yet the fourth prince stubbornly insisted on becoming Leona's little follower no matter what. In the end, Leona could not argue him down and reluctantly agreed to his request. The fourth prince was instantly overjoyed and hugged her tightly. Leona took the opportunity to pat his head, but felt that the scene was somewhat strange. However, all of this had long been part of her plan. The next morning, when the fourth prince went out, he saw the second prince outside the palace, squatting in a corner and staring at something. He went over to take a look as well, only to see 6 dead rabbits lying scattered on the ground. While the eighth prince was angrily scolding the servants nearby, the fourth prince immediately realized that in this palace, the cutest creature resembling a rabbit was none other than Leona. The eighth prince was venting his anger on the rabbits to release his resentment toward Leona. It turned out that the eighth prince still had not forgotten the humiliation of being so frightened by Leona's spiritual power last time that he wet himself on the spot. As he kicked the rabbits, he viciously declared that he would go kill Leona tonight. After hearing this, the second and fourth prince's expressions darkened instantly, and they decided on the spot to guard Leona together that night and act as her bodyguards. When night fell, the eighth prince quietly made his way to the entrance of Leona's palace, preparing to launch a sneak attack. But as soon as he approached the main gate, the second and fourth princes suddenly appeared, coldly mocking his audacity for daring to cause trouble for their boss. What followed was a series of miserable screams. With both hands wrapped in bandages, covered in dust and grime after his failed sneak attack, the eighth prince returned to his palace in a sorry state, still cursing, complaining that the second and fourth princes had been so ruthless for Leona's sake. At that moment, a servant suddenly came to report that a letter had been received from the eldest prince, with whom he was very close. The eighth prince immediately snatched the letter and began reading it impatiently. Meanwhile, in a palace far outside the empire, the eldest prince stood by the window gazing at the moonlight, his eyes already filled with cold, killing intent. At the same time, deep within a mysterious cave, a red-eyed white dragon slowly opened its eyes, awakening in the darkness. This is truly the most outrageous little girl I have ever seen. Inside a 3-year-old body resides a soul that has already lived for 300 years. And this bizarre state had troubled her for a long time. After all these years, when would her body finally grow up? The 12th Princess Leona complained inwardly like this, while having a heart-to-heart talk in her room with the servant beside her. The servant comforted Leona, telling her not to worry too much about her body, because there were many people around her willing to protect her. But Leona felt that even combined, those people were not as strong as she alone was. However, after thinking it over carefully, she realized that the people around her were indeed very friendly toward her. Only the personalities of the eldest prince and the 6th princess were ones she had never truly come into contact with, so she would have to be more cautious about them in the future. As she was thinking this, a shadow of an assassin suddenly appeared in the room, which gave Leona quite a fright. Unfortunately, in order to trick the master of the magic tower earlier, she had squandered too many gold coins, and her magical spiritual power had long been overdrawn, leaving her body in a weakened state. The assassin came neither too early nor too late, but precisely when her spiritual power was exhausted. At this moment, Leona could only shut her eyes tightly and pray in her heart for a miracle. Yet after waiting for quite a while, she did not feel any pain at all. She secretly opened her eyes a slit, only to see that the servant had already drawn her sword cleanly and killed the assassin on the spot. The servant's expression was calm, as if she had merely done something insignificant, even complaining that she had been a bit careless and let the assassin's blood splatter onto her. The scene before her left Leona completely stunned. How could even the servant by her side kill an assassin so easily? And she had not sensed the servant's true strength at all. Early the next morning, after getting up, Leona walked while muttering softly to herself, constantly speculating in her heart about what the true identity of this servant who had always taken care of her really was. The servant seemed to see through her thoughts and took the initiative to tell Leona not to mind the way she had dealt with the assassin, because she had once been a special forces soldier of sort. Only then did Leona suddenly recall that in her previous life, after she and Lakis of the Kingdom of Corel had unified the empire, a brutally fierce war had broken out with the Duchy of Elon. At that time, the army of the Duchy of Elon was entirely composed of Sorit Special Forces soldiers. Leona knew well how powerful the Duchy of Elon was, and had earnestly tried to persuade Lakis not to act rashly. But Lakis insisted on going to war, nearly losing his life as a result. Unable to bear watching him die, Leona had no choice but to take action personally, using magic on the battlefield to save his life. And now the servant slowly spoke of her own past. She had once been the personal guard of Leona's mother. It turned out that the princess of the Duchy of Elon was Leona's biological mother. That war had completely pushed the Duchy of Elon to ruin, and with no other choice, they had sought aid from the Hazes Empire and ultimately signed a peace treaty. Sending the princess to the Hazes Empire was one of the most important conditions of that treaty. The princess thus married far away into Hazes and later gave birth to Leona. The guard accompanied her all the way and eventually became Leona's servant. After learning the full story, a huge wave surged in Leona's heart, and she began to deeply regret the choices she had made in her previous life. If she had not saved that heartless man Lakis back then, perhaps now the servant and her mother would not have fallen into such a fate, nor would they have lost their lives because of it. Seeing her dejected expression, the servant thought Leona was missing her mother, and softly told her that on her 5th birthday, a delegation from the Duchy of Elon would visit the Hazes Empire. At that time, she would be able to meet the Grand Duke of the Duchy. But Leona was startled, for she remembered that in her previous life as a witch, the very person she had once wanted to personally destroy on the battlefield was this Grand Duke. And this time, with her grandfather's arrival, it was very likely that he would see through the true identity of the witch within Leona. While Leona was troubled by this, she ran into her father halfway along the corridor. Unexpectedly, the moment her father saw her, his first reaction was to use levitation magic to lift her whole body into his arms. Leona was full of question marks. Her father, who was usually cold and indifferent even to his children's life and death, had suddenly become so gentle today. What confused her even more was that her father solemnly said that Leona must be tired and wanted a hug from her dad. Leona immediately complained inwardly. Who wants a hug? You were the one who forcibly pulled me up here. Faced with her father's sudden concern, she could only play along, obediently thanking him verbally for the hug. Turning her head, she suddenly noticed her teacher, the master of the magic tower, nearby as well, and could not help but feel puzzled as to why he was here too. With a grin, the master of the magic tower told her that the divine palace would be coming today to bestow a blessing upon her. Leona was utterly confused, saying she had never heard of anything called a blessing. Her father then explained that he had heard Leona might be a descendant of the dragon race, so he had specially invited the divine palace to examine her body. Leona froze on the spot, muttering inwardly about who could have said such a thing. An aide quietly leaned close to her ear and told her that it was the master of the magic tower who had said it. Leona immediately glared angrily, shooting a fierce look at the master of the magic tower, feeling that he had violated the magical contract they had signed. The master of the magic tower hurriedly waved his hands, explaining in panic that he had not broken their agreement at all, although he had not revealed the secret of Leona's sole possession to her father. When faced with the temptation of that pile of spirit gemstones, he casually made up a reason, saying that Leona's spiritual power was abnormally strong, and that she was very likely a descendant of the dragon race. Her father then decided to invite the divine palace to check whether Leona truly had dragon blood. After learning the truth, Leona's mind turned quickly, and she immediately changed her tone to praise the master of the magic tower for a job well done. She suddenly realized that she could use the identity of dragon descendant to conceal the existence of her witch's soul. That way, even if her grandfather came, it would not be easy for him to see through her. So Leona simply began loudly declaring in her father's arms that she was a being who possessed the power of a dragon. Seeing her like this, her father became even more eager to confirm the truth. The master of the magic tower watched in astonishment, secretly marveling at how brilliant Leona's diversion tactic and acting skills were. Leona, however, looked displeased, scolding him for not using telepathy to speak to her casually. In fact, she herself knew that having a 5-star level spiritual power body from birth was abnormal. So she comforted herself that since the divine palace was about to arrive anyway, it would be good to have a thorough examination. Suddenly, the second prince hurried over to bid farewell to his father. It turned out that he had come of age and needed to leave the imperial city to undergo expeditionary training elsewhere. Her father, however, remained expressionless and did not say a single word, which made Leona mutter inwardly, wondering how he could not even offer a blessing when his child was about to travel far away. With her big watery eyes wide open, she directly asked her father why he would not tell her brother, "Have a safe journey." Her father looked down at Leona in his arms and fell silent for a moment. The aides and servants around them all held their breath, thinking her question was far too bold. But the next second, her father truly opened his mouth and told the second prince, "Have a safe journey." Those words left the second prince completely stunned. The father, who was usually cold and imposing, had actually said something so warm to him because of Leona. The second prince was both shocked and moved, and immediately declared that he would complete the task Leona had given him. It turned out that when Leona had defeated the second prince and taken him as her subordinate, she had specifically arranged for him to detour to the kingdom of Corel during his expedition to investigate the latest intelligence on Lakis. Thus, Leona also solemnly urged him to successfully complete the mission. Unexpectedly, the second prince suddenly showed a slightly jealous expression and hesitantly requested that Leona pat his head before he set off. It turned out that he had heard the fourth prince had already been patted on the head by Leona, and he wanted the same treatment. Leona felt speechless, complaining inwardly about how these two brothers were even competing over something as trivial as a head pat. Nevertheless, she still reached out and gently patted the second prince's little head. The second prince instantly revealed a shy smile, as if happier than if he had eaten candy. After the farewell ended, the second prince boarded a carriage and slowly left the palace. Her father held Leona and watched the departing carriage, a trace of complexity suddenly appearing in his eyes. This made Leona's heart tighten, feeling that the way her father looked at her had subtly changed. On the way, she saw that her father remained as cold and merciless as ever toward the second prince who was about to go on an expedition, and she could not help but ask why he could not be a little gentler to her brother, the way he was to her. Her father replied calmly that the reason he loved Leona was because she was strong enough. Leona felt that the second prince was not actually weak. He had only been defeated by her and become her subordinate. Her father then asked her in return, since she could defeat her brother, why not simply kill him? Leona was stunned and confusedly retorted that the second prince was her brother, her family. How could she kill him? The moment the words left her mouth, she realized something was not quite right. Everyone around them fell silent, not daring to breathe loudly, because everyone knew that her father had personally killed 37 siblings before finally obtaining the right of succession and becoming the current emperor. Only the one who survived to the very end could sit on the throne, and Leona had already resolved not to kill people casually in this life. She recalled how, at the age of 5 in her previous life, she had been deceived by a strange man and turned into a vessel for a witch. Countless innocent little girls had been captured as experimental subjects, dying one after another before her eyes. She never wanted to relive that hellish scene again. At this moment, her father slowly spoke, saying that back then, he had not actually intended to personally kill all his siblings. It was precisely because he had spared them a chance at survival that he later faced a string of ruthless betrayals. So he warned Leona never to be soft-hearted toward enemies in the future. Otherwise, sooner or later, the one who stabbed her would be someone she had once spared. After calming down and thinking it through, Leona had to admit that her father's words did carry some truth. Then the two of them walked into the palace and saw that the divine palace had already been waiting for quite some time, and her father immediately signaled for Leona's blessing to begin at once. Shingong muttered silently in his heart. No matter how he looked at this little girl, she didn't seem like any descendant of the dragon clan. But the ritual still had to be carried out, as Shingong's spiritual power slowly flowed into Leona's small hand. Before long, his expression suddenly changed because he discovered that his power was being continuously devoured by Leona's body. This frightened Shingong so much that cold sweat streamed down his face, and he repeatedly said he had never encountered such a situation. Leona suddenly felt a sharp pain and couldn't help shouting, "Are you trying to kill me?" Everyone around them froze, too embarrassed to know how to react. Only then did Leona realize she had misspoken and hurriedly apologized in a low voice. Her father, however, frowned, sensing something was wrong. Why would a blessing cause Leona pain? Shingong also showed hesitation, saying he wasn't entirely sure either and wanted to test again. And he assured Leona that this time, he absolutely would not hurt her. He solemnly took hold of Leona's small hand and released his spiritual power once more. After a while, Shingong finally reached a conclusion. He told her father that Leona did not need to wait for enlightenment like other members of the royal family. The power within her had already fully awakened. Even he could not estimate the upper limit of the spiritual power inside her. At last, Shingong solemnly declared, Leona herself was a true dragon's body. Ever since being identified by Shingong as possessing true dragon clan bloodline, Leona stayed in the palace every day, trying to awaken the 5-star spiritual power within her body. Gardka stood nearby, watching her every move, growing more and more curious. He saw Leona suddenly clench her little fists, her face flushed red, and the next second, she began kicking the bedboard violently, muttering under her breath that she was simply too weak. Kus finally couldn't hold back and asked what exactly had happened. Leona stammered, saying only that she felt a bit irritated and that he didn't need to worry. In truth, she didn't want Kus to know that she was trying to stimulate her spiritual power. But the more she thought about it, the angrier she became. Clearly dragon clan blood flowed through her veins. Yet she still couldn't fully awaken that legendary 5-star potential. And she couldn't help sighing again and again. She told Kus that she wanted to become stronger, but no matter what she did, it never felt enough. Kus spoke up for her, saying that at only 3 years old, her strength was already terrifying. But Leona was not satisfied. She knew that this bit of power was nothing more than a drop in the ocean. To become strong enough as soon as possible to personally kill the heartless Lakis, and to dominate the entire continent, she had to grow stronger. At that moment, Leona suddenly realized she hadn't seen the servant all morning. Kus told her the servant was in another room. Leona immediately pushed the door open and hurled herself into the servant's arms like a little cannonball. The servant asked in confusion why she had gotten up so early today. Leona puffed out her little chest and answered seriously that since she was a descendant of the dragon clan, of course, she would rise early. After saying that, she noticed the table piled high with all kinds of gifts and curiously asked where they had come from. The servant smiled and told her they had all been delivered early in the morning by various prestigious families. It turned out that once news spread that a dragon clan descendant had appeared in the palace, everyone couldn't wait to curry favor with Leona in advance. Knowing the truth, Leona casually remarked, "Isn't this basically bribery?" The servant immediately asked, Where did you learn the word bribery? Realizing she had slipped again, Leona quickly shifted the blame to the aide. With a serious face, she said she usually learned such words from him. The servant, however, felt that the aide was teaching all sorts of nonsense and resolved to have a proper talk with him another day. However, when Leona wanted to pick a few decent gifts, she found that after looking through them all, not a single one satisfied her. At that moment, the servant secretly glanced at Leona and mustered the courage to ask if she could host Leona's birthday banquet in the future. Leona hesitated upon hearing this. She began to think calmly and felt that her current power was still too weak. She said they could use the birthday banquet as an opportunity to observe how capable those prestigious families truly were. So she nodded and agreed to the servant's request. Next, Leona wanted to ask Kus what he thought about it. Kus felt it was a good idea, but casually reminded her that the mad-like eldest prince would be returning soon. Those words made Leona's heart tighten, and doubt crept in. She couldn't help wondering just how strong was the eldest prince, and why did everyone speak of him with fear? Just as she was thinking this, footsteps suddenly sounded outside the door, and the fourth prince rushed in with excitement to greet Leona. Smiling, he told her, "You're the hottest figure in the palace now. News about the Dragon Clan descendant has spread everywhere." Leona couldn't help showing a proud expression upon hearing this. However, the fourth prince quickly reminded her not to forget him, her little brother, now that she was a Dragon Clan descendant. But Leona flatly rejected that on the spot, forbidding him from mentioning the words little brother again, and asking if he could have some ambition. She even complained that the second prince had looked as sour as spilled vinegar when he saw her last time, and had shamelessly asked her to pat his head. At this point, Leona tried to learn more about the eldest prince from the fourth prince, but the fourth prince simply thought the man was a lunatic and stubbornly refused to let Leona meet him. This only deepened the doubts in Leona's heart. So the fourth prince reluctantly told her that the eldest prince had never shown mercy to the weak. He even recalled that he had once nearly been killed by the eldest prince. Leona pressed further. "So you were beaten half to death?" The fourth prince shook his head and said that the man could have killed him in one blow, but instead chose to lock him up and torture him like a rat. Even now, recalling it made him feel utterly sick. Upon hearing this, Leona's expression darkened, revealing an unusually gloomy look. She concluded in her heart that the eldest prince must be tired of living to dare bully the little brother she had acknowledged, clearly not taking her, the boss, seriously. Seeing this look on Leona's face, the fourth prince was completely stunned. But Leona suddenly turned around and scolded him harshly, declaring that she would train him to become stronger. From now on, the eldest prince would be beaten by the fourth prince himself. She then took the fourth prince straight to the training grounds. However, the fourth prince felt that the eldest prince, after all, was the grand uncle's son, and their strengths were on entirely different levels. Leona analyzed calmly, "You are His Majesty's son, and the grand uncle was personally killed by His Majesty. How could his son possibly be stronger than His Majesty's son?" These words struck straight into the fourth prince's heart, leaving him speechless yet stung. Even so, the fourth prince kept retreating. Seeing this, Leona gritted her teeth and immediately cast magic, forcing him to begin training at once. At the sight of the magic in Leona's hand, the fourth prince was so frightened that he turned and ran away in a panic. This made Leona sigh. The fourth prince was far too useless, running away before even trying. At that moment, Leona suddenly wanted to try, transferring the spiritual power of the witch's soul into her current Dragon Clan body. She began exploring within her body, and indeed sensed a powerful energy that had been hidden away. She suddenly recalled that in her previous life as a witch, she had once used this hidden power to confront the immensely powerful old dragon Eskina head-on. At that time, the old dragon had immediately recognized that power as the Red Sea. Yet Leona had never understood what kind of power this so-called Red Sea truly was. Just then, a black magic arrow suddenly shot through the air and pierced Leona's shoulder. She collapsed onto the ground, completely unaware of who had ambushed her. Emerging from the shadows was none other than the eighth prince, accompanied by a group of assassins. The eighth prince looked smug and warned Leona condescendingly to keep a low profile if she wanted to live a few more years. After saying that, he immediately ordered the assassins to eliminate her. In an instant, with a snap of a finger, another black spell shot straight toward Leona's chest. Caught off guard, she was struck head-on and forced down to one knee. It was because her earlier training had not been completed. The spiritual power within her was raging out of control, leaving her unable to dodge. Then the assassin condensed another black magic sphere and hurled it heavily at Leona again. This time, she barely blocked it with a magic shield raised in one hand, but she was gravely injured, blood spilling from the corner of her mouth. Leona knew clearly that her strength was far inferior to the assassin before her. She could only hold on desperately, while waiting for support from the fourth prince and Guardkus, yet neither appeared. Thus, Leona had no choice but to decide to unleash the hidden power deep within her body. She suddenly grasped the power of the Red Sea, and it burst forth instantly, dark red fire magic covering her entire body. Seeing the terrifying spiritual power erupting from Leona, the eighth prince and the assassin's eyes widened in shock. freezing on the spot. The next second, they both collapsed to their knees in front of her. Leona was full of confusion. She hadn't even truly made a move yet, so why had they fallen? At that moment, a strange and dangerous voice suddenly sounded, greeting Leona first. Looking up, she saw that the newcomer was the very eldest prince whom the fourth prince had described as feared by all. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the palace, the fountain pen in His Majesty's hand suddenly snapped in two. He seemed to have sensed the return of the eldest prince's presence, and his heart sank as he immediately prepared to find Leona. However, the injuries inside Leona's body had already reached their limit. Facing the unfathomably powerful eldest prince before her, she knew she could not handle him alone. Yet, even in her weakness, she couldn't help but curse at him, demanding to know why he had suddenly come here to cause trouble. The eldest prince looked delighted, saying he quite liked her unrestrained personality. He then began threatening Leona, telling her that killing her would truly take only a matter of minutes. But Leona was not afraid at all, believing that once Guardcus arrived, the eldest prince would definitely suffer. Hearing this, the eldest prince burst into laughter, thinking she was far too naive to expect a mere guard to save her. At that moment, Kus and the fourth prince, kneeling behind him, finally entered Leona's view. Leona froze on the spot. Kus and the fourth prince had already been subdued by the eldest prince and were only one step away from execution. In fact, the eldest prince had known from the beginning that the eighth prince would attempt an assassination today. He simply found it a miracle that Leona had survived this long. In his view, the ability Leona had displayed was already worthy of him, and he had been waiting for someone like her to appear. Leona looked even more confused after hearing this, having no idea what nonsense the eldest prince was spouting. But the eldest prince seriously told her that there was no need to worry about her young age. He could wait until she came of age. He wanted to marry Leona. He even declared that if her dragon clan bloodline combined with his holy light power, the offspring born would possess unparalleled strength capable of changing the entire world. As he said this, he revealed a rare look of sincerity and extended his hand to formally invite her. Looking into his eyes, Leona was suddenly reminded of when she was 5 in her previous life, deceived by a stranger and made into a witch's vessel. Later, she met the man she had fallen in love with at first sight, helped him seize the throne, only to be cruelly killed by him afterward. At this moment, the eldest prince's gaze seemed to overlap with those two men who had once deceived her. Leona swore silently that this time, no matter what, she would never trust anyone again. She immediately raised her hand and fired a magic rocket at the eldest prince. Caught off guard, his cheek was sliced open, blood flowing down from the wound. Only then did the eldest prince realize that this was Leona's answer. Leona also declared her stance to his face. She would never agree to this marriage, and even intended to kill him right now. As soon as the words fell, she unleashed powerful fire magic at him, and blazing flames instantly surrounded the eldest prince. Leona knew very well that she had already been seriously injured by the eighth prince's earlier ambush. This battle with the eldest prince had to be decided quickly, so she increased her magical output once more, amplifying the flames in an attempt to completely engulf him. Unexpectedly, the eldest prince was dragged out of the sea of fire by a guard and suspended high in the air. With a look of disdain, he found Leona's naivety almost adorable, still fantasizing about killing him with such trivial skill. On the ground, Leona cursed angrily, shouting at him to come down immediately and duel her. To her surprise, the eldest prince not only refused to come down but deliberately hovered in the air, taunting her that he wouldn't come down. If she had the ability, she should bring him down herself. An idea struck Leona. Even if he stayed in the air, it didn't mean she had no way to deal with him. She immediately cast explosion magic, aiming at the eldest prince in the sky. With a loud boom, the explosion detonated beside him, flames and smoke sweeping through the air. But the eldest prince casually unfolded a light magic shield, completely blocking the blast damage. He coldly warned Leona that such childish magic wasn't even worth his attention. This made Leona's heart tremble in shock. Just how strong was the eldest prince that he could defend against all her magic? Suddenly, the eldest prince seemed to grow bored and decided not to give Leona any more chance to catch her breath. He raised his hand and released a massive light sword spell. Its blade pointed straight at Leona. He even mocked her, casually thanking her for the entire magic show she had just put on. The enormous white blade of light roared toward Leona. Seeing this, Leona could only smile bitterly, thinking she had truly underestimated him this time. She hadn't expected the eldest prince's strength to be so overwhelming. She began recalling everything that had happened in this life from birth until now. She felt that, in this life, she had actually lived rather happily. So she prepared herself to face the coming of death. I was careless. At that very moment, a powerful lightning magic shield suddenly appeared. Standing in front of her was, astonishingly, her father, who had arrived just in time, forcibly blocking that sword strike. At that moment, Leona was tightly held in her father's arms, and as she looked at him, she suddenly felt everything become warmer than ever before. She threw herself into her father's broad chest, grabbed his collar, and began to complain. Why did you come so late? While I was adjusting my spiritual power, they joined forces to bully me. I almost died. Her father merely gently stroked Leona's cheek. In a soft voice, he told her, "As long as I am here, you will never die, because you are my daughter." It was the first time Leona had ever heard such a title with her own ears, and her heart instantly softened as she obediently leaned against her father's tree-like, reliable shoulder. Then she quietly asked her father to help her get rid of the eldest prince. Hearing this, the eldest prince on the opposite side could not help but be startled. He immediately argued to their father that this was a dispute over succession and that he must not interfere. He even emphasized that the outcome of this duel had already been decided and that it should be him who personally finished off Leona. But before him was his own daughter, who had nearly died right in front of his eyes. The father erupted instantly and immediately unleashed magic toward the eldest prince. The eldest prince was completely unable to withstand it, and in an instant was severely injured, dropping to his knees and coughing up blood. He wanted an explanation from his father, demanding to know why he was being treated this way. But the father only told the eldest prince to stand down and sternly reprimanded him for being too arrogant. However, the next day, when Leona recalled the scene of that duel alone, she felt lingering fear every time she thought about it. If her father had not appeared at that time, she would surely have died at the hands of the eldest prince by now. Yet immediately afterward, she thought of the moment when her father held her and said the words, "You are my daughter, so you will not die." This gradually stirred a sense of anxiety in Leona's heart. She worried that if her father were to discover her true identity as the soul of a witch, perhaps he would not save her, but instead kill her with his own hands. Thus, Leona made a decision. From now on, she must carefully conceal her secret. Just as she was thinking this, her teacher, the master of the magic tower, suddenly appeared before her. Leona, however, angrily turned her head away, pretending not to see him at all. This left the magic tower master extremely embarrassed. It had clearly been some time since he had seen Leona. So why was he being met with such coldness the moment they reunited? At this time, Leona could not help but question him. Where had he been when she was beaten half to death by the eldest prince? And why hadn't he come to save her? What was the point of showing up now and pretending to care? The magic tower master could only stammer in explanation, saying he had other matters to attend to at the time. Although he had not made it in time to save her, he had come this time bearing good news. But Leona had no intention of listening and directly told him to get lost and never appear again. The magic tower master hurriedly added, the good news was that he had just gone to teach the eldest prince a lesson. Leona's eyes lit up at once, and she immediately asked, "So, did you finish him off?" The magic tower master could only awkwardly wave his hand and say he had not. It turned out that just moments ago, the eldest prince had been struck by their father's freezing magic, his entire body encased in ice, so stiff that he could not move at all. He had to ask the guard beside him how long such freezing magic would take to undo. But after inquiring, he learned that it would take at least 10 days to completely thaw. For the first time, doubt arose in the eldest prince's heart. What exactly was Leona's identity? Even their father was willing to break the rules of the succession dispute for her, personally attacking his own son. Even the adjutant had not stopped him, but instead seemed to be protecting Leona. Thinking this, even though he still did not understand why they were protecting her, he concluded that he had been wronged too greatly. Even if those two were shielding her, he would certainly find an opportunity in the future to kill Leona. Suddenly, a chilling wind swept through the room. The magic tower master appeared silently and told the eldest prince, "You are mistaken. There are more than just those two protecting Leona. There is also me." At that moment, upon seeing the magic tower master, the guard immediately cast magic to protect the eldest prince. The guard was also full of confusion, saying that his men were clearly guarding outside. How had the magic tower master slipped in? The magic tower master sneered disdainfully, saying that such small fry could never stop him. As soon as his words fell, another group of assassins sprang out from the corner of the room, surrounding the magic tower master. In an instant, he unleashed intense golden magic, blinding them so completely that they could not open their eyes and could only struggle desperately on the ground. He coldly warned the eldest prince to behave himself in the future, or he would die a miserable death. When Leona heard that the magic tower master had stood up for her, she felt immensely satisfied. She patted the magic tower master on the shoulder and praised him for doing a great job this time. She even declared domineeringly, "From now on, beating up the eldest prince is something I will do personally." After saying that, she clenched her little fists until they cracked and swore fiercely that she would personally kill the eldest prince one day. The magic tower master, looking at Leona at that moment, only found her incredibly adorable. He casually began chatting with her and asked whether she no longer intended to leave the royal family. Without hesitation, Leona replied that she would not leave because she intended to become emperor in the future. It turned out that the magic tower master had already signed a magical contract with Leona and knew the secret of her soul. He also stated that he would support her and help her eliminate the eldest prince. But Leona suddenly thought of a question. If this body of dragon descent she now possessed did not house its original soul, but instead contained the reincarnated soul of a witch, Then where had the soul that originally belonged to this body gone? Thus, Leona decided to investigate and find out what had truly happened to the body's original soul. She began planning to gather details about her mother from the servants, hoping to unravel the secret of the original soul. The next day, a servant patiently fed Leona her meal, but after only a few bites, Leona pretended to be full. Then she suddenly buried herself in the servant's arms and softly said that she had started to miss her mother. Upon hearing this, the servant's expression clearly turned hesitant, and she could only gently comfort her. At that moment, Leona seized the opportunity to ask whether there were any of her mother's belongings that could be given to her as keepsakes. Only then did the servant tell her that the late empress's belongings were all kept in the Dandelion Palace. The moment Leona heard this, she immediately decided to investigate that very night. When night fell, she changed into dark clothing and dressed herself up like a little thief. She quietly prepared to sneak out of her own palace. Just as she reached the door, she saw the guard Kuss standing watch outside. She suddenly remembered that ever since Kuss had fought the eldest prince, he had not taken the initiative to see her, so she decided to bring Kuss along on this mission. Upon seeing Leona, Kuss instead looked full of shame. He felt that failing to defeat the eldest prince last time had been utterly useless of him. His spirit medium magic was originally restrained by the eldest prince's holy light power, and without defensive equipment, he simply could not compete. After hearing this, Leona directly told Kuss to lift his spirits. She told him that in the future, she would just buy him better equipment. Kuss could only smile bitterly and say that such equipment was extremely expensive and not something ordinary people could afford. Leona, however, was unconcerned, thinking how expensive could it really be. Unexpectedly, Kuss leaned close to her ear and whispered the real price. Leona immediately broke out in a cold sweat, but the next second, she struck a bold and generous pose and told Kuss that she was not short of money at all. No matter how expensive it was, she would definitely equip him properly. After saying that, she took Kuss along to her mother's former palace, the Dandelion Palace. When the two stood outside the palace, they discovered that a powerful magical barrier enveloped the entrance. Kuss quickly reminded Leona that he could not go any further. Leona looked puzzled and asked why he could not enter with her. It turned out that Kuss had long heard that this barrier allowed only royal blood relatives to enter. After learning the reason, Leona could only push open the palace doors with 7 parts worry and 3 parts anticipation. Immediately, a cold and desolate scene came into view. Leona found it somewhat strange. The barrier had not stopped her. She had thought it would trigger some mechanism. Yet after only a few steps forward, the pages of a book on the table began to flip by themselves. Drawn to it, Leona stepped closer and discovered it was a diary left by her mother. With a nervous heart, she carefully began to read. The diary opened on March 2nd, year 421. That was the first time Leona's mother learned she was pregnant and would become a mother. She joyfully stroked her belly, imagining what expression His Majesty would have upon hearing the news. "I want to give up." Such words had already appeared on that page. And 27 days later, on March 29th, her mother's abdominal pain became exceptionally intense, her mood extremely irritable. She could not eat anything and even began to entertain thoughts of giving up the child in her womb. Another 60 days passed. Her mother showed signs of imminent labor, the pain so severe she could hardly breathe. The days afterward grew worse and worse, her condition increasingly grim. Once again, she entertained the idea of abandoning the child. Seeing this, Leona felt particularly distressed. It was as though she personally experienced her mother's pain and that helpless urge to give up the child in her womb. Yet she continued turning the pages. Gradually, her mother's suffering and torment began to ease, and the entries grew somewhat more cheerful. She even wrote that father once said she looked as cute as a little lion. So her mother translated the meaning of little lion into the name Leona and carefully wrote it down in the notebook. At this point, Leona was completely stunned, standing frozen in place. She clearly remembered that her name had been given by her father after she was born. But why, in her mother's diary, had her name already been written before she was even born? With doubts in mind, Leona vaguely felt that there must have been things between His Majesty and her mother that she did not know. She decided to keep reading. Soon, the diary reached the time when her mother was 5.5 months pregnant. Her mother suddenly felt worsening pain and fell unconscious for several days. Then she gritted her teeth and endured another month until the 7th month of pregnancy. In terror, she recorded that the child had died inside her womb. Seeing this, Leona's heart tightened and she felt extremely distressed. She almost did not dare to continue reading. Yet in the entries that followed, Leona saw clues about how the child might be saved. She clenched her teeth and continued reading, determined to finish the truth. In the later entries, her mother blamed herself endlessly. She felt she should not have resented the child in her womb because of her physical suffering. She believed it was her own resentment and weakness that had killed the child. Overwhelmed by grief, she even accidentally broke the toy she had prepared in advance to give to Leona after birth. Reading this, Leona felt as though her heart had been fiercely stabbed. Her nose burned with soreness, and her little fists clenched unconsciously. It was as though she experienced a second time the moment her mother learned of her child's death, that desperate longing to see her once more. Thus, Leona decided to read just just one last page, and then stop. But when she turned to the next page, the diary recorded the process by which her mother tried to save the child. At that moment, an envelope tucked inside the diary fell with a soft plop at Leona's feet. She immediately bent down to pick it up. Opening the envelope, she found a handwritten letter her mother had left specifically for her before her death. It turned out that her deceased mother had long anticipated that one day Leona would come searching, investigating the secret of the soul within her body. So she had written the truth word by word into this letter. It turned out that her mother had used her own life as the price for dark magic, placing the soul of a witch into the body of the child who had already died in her womb. That was why Leona had been able to gain new life in this world with the witch's soul. This confirmed her earlier suspicion. Her mother had indeed used dark magic, and in the letter, her mother also mentioned that at the time, she had already sensed Leona's previous life as a witch, and the tragic experience of being abandoned by her parents and lover. Therefore, what that dark magic had summoned was precisely this abandoned soul, so that in this life, Leona could have a complete family. Her mother also told Leona that from now on, she would no longer be alone. Do not think that you have occupied this body, nor believe that it is merely my daughter's body being lent to you. Please stay here and be my daughter, all right? Treat me as your real mother. In this life, I was an incompetent mother. In the next life, I hope you can still be my daughter. By then, Mother will have experience and will surely love you even more. I truly love you, Leona. Reading this, Leona could no longer hold back. Tears swirled in her eyes and finally fell. She remembered that in her previous life as a witch, she had once helped that heartless man, Lakis, and at that time, he had been going to attack her mother's country. For the sake of peace, her mother had gone to the Hazes Empire and become the Empress. Now she had given her life to save her. Instead, Leona felt that by all logic, it should have been her mother who resented her. But just as she thought this, the letter also mentioned that in the box beside it was a piece of clothing her mother had personally prepared for her. Curiosity immediately rose in Leona. What kind of clothing could be so mysterious? Unexpectedly, when she opened the box, inside was a small cloak. Leona picked up the cloak, brushed off the dust, and muttered in disdain who would wear something like this. It was so old, it looked like only she would be suited to wear it. Yet when she draped the cloak over her shoulders and twisted a few times, she was surprised to find that it fit her perfectly. Wearing the cloak, Leona came to the room where her mother's portrait was kept. Looking at the portrait, she sighed that her mother had been truly great, willing to sacrifice her life to save her. She would cherish this love in her heart. She gently stroked the portrait. She told her mother that she would certainly not disappoint her expectations. She would strive to become even happier. At that moment, outside the palace, the guard Kus was anxiously waiting, nearly driven mad by worry, feeling that Leona had been inside far too long. Just as Kus gritted his teeth and prepared to force his way in, Leona pushed open the door while holding her mother's diary. The door panel struck Kus squarely on the forehead, knocking him flat onto the ground with a thud. Startled, Leona hurried over to check his injury. She carefully blew on the large bump on his forehead and scolded him for standing directly in front of the door. Didn't he know she had almost knocked him to death just now? Unexpectedly, Kus paid no attention to the swelling on his forehead. Instead, he immediately sprang up, gave a thumbs up, and said he was in great shape and would not die. But he soon noticed that Leona was wearing a strange and unfamiliar outfit today, and that she had clearly been crying. So he asked with concern what had happened. Leona spoke vaguely, forcing a smile, and saying it was nothing. She had just cried a little. To her surprise, upon hearing this, Kus immediately entered battle mode and swiftly drew his sword, demanding to know where the assassin was. Leona quickly stopped him, telling him to put the sword away and that there was no assassin. She had merely read her mother's diary and been moved to tears. She even proudly showed off to Kus that this outfit had been left to her by her mother. After understanding the truth, Kus hurriedly apologized to Leona, admitting he had been too reckless just now. Then, he curiously tried to ask about the contents of the diary. Leona was well aware that she could not let Kus know the secret of her identity, so she casually explained that it was merely some loving words her mother had written to her. Unexpectedly, Kus reminded her that the diary should also contain many words of wisdom. Leona was puzzled after hearing this, wondering how Kus could be so certain. Kus replied calmly that he had once crossed paths with Ipila and knew her very well. Upon hearing this, Leona's heart tightened instantly, and she nearly felt the urge to kill on the spot. She ground her teeth in anger, feeling that Kus had actually dared to fight her mother. But then she realized she currently knew nothing about the details of that battle, so she could only force herself to calm down first and continue drawing information from Kus. It turned out that Leona's mother, Ipila, was an extremely powerful puppeteer who had once fought the spiritualist Kus to a standstill. Hearing this, Leona fell into absent-minded contemplation. The strongest emperor on the continent, along with a top-tier puppeteer. Could it be that her powerful spiritual energy, with all 5 elements fully mastered, was inherited from the bloodline of her father and mother, each possessing their own unique abilities. Just as she was thinking, a vast surge of spiritual power suddenly stirred in the air. She looked up and saw that it was her father appearing before the two of them. The moment he opened his mouth, her father coldly asked what they were doing here. Kiss immediately stepped in front of Leona. However, her father only glared angrily, his gaze barely leaving Leona. Seeing this, Leona quickly jumped out from behind Kiss and took the initiative to greet her father. Dad, long time no see. But this time when her father saw Leona, he was no longer as gentle as usual, instead wearing a cold expression. He sternly scolded her, questioning how she had ended up in a place like this. Kiss hurriedly stepped forward to take the blame for Leona, telling His Majesty that he had brought her here. Yet her father refused to let it go, demanding to know the real reason Leona had come here. With no other choice, Leona stammered and said that she had come to visit her mother. Upon hearing this, her father immediately warned Leona in a cold voice. He told her that if she ran around recklessly, the servants and guards would be severely punished because of it, and that she should weigh the consequences herself. Only then did Leona truly understand. Her father was worried that she would once again be schemed against by the other princes and princesses. So she suddenly stepped in front of her father. Blushing slightly and shyly, she pressed him, asking, "So you're worried about me, aren't you, Dad?" As she spoke, she poked his thigh with her small hand. The furious expression her father had just worn instantly vanished into thin air. He admonished her, saying that since she knew he was worried, she still dared to run around. But Leona chattered quickly, trying to salvage the situation. She said that after finishing her training and tending to her injuries, she had originally planned to go see him, yet her father was still concerned that she might be hurt by the crown prince. Unexpectedly, Leona then pointed at her father with a serious expression, telling him that if she stayed indoors all the time, rumors would spread throughout the empire that she had lost to the crown prince. After hearing this, her father suddenly felt that he had raised a foolish daughter. Yet Leona once again declared proudly to her father that once she became emperor, she would make sure to see everyone kneel before her. After she said this, His Majesty couldn't help but begin imagining it, picturing what Leona would look like after ascending the throne. However, to his surprise, Leona seized the moment to complain. She said that if she failed to become emperor, the crown prince would make a private marriage pact with her. Her father's expression changed drastically upon hearing this. An icy killing intent instantly solidified in the air. Shaking her head with a sigh, Leona then added that not only did the crown prince want to marry her, he had even forced her to promise that she would bear a powerful child with him in the future. At this moment, upon hearing this, the guard Kiss immediately turned around, ready to go kill that beastly crown prince. Meanwhile, her father rolled his eyes directly after hearing this. With a single breath, the chill in the air surged, and Leona instantly began shivering from the cold. She quickly tugged at her father's leg, telling him to put away his ice magic quickly, saying that she was about to freeze to death. However, her father only felt extremely displeased inside, thinking that the bastard crown prince dared to set his sights on his precious daughter. Leona immediately put on a determined expression, declaring that no matter what, she would become emperor. But feeling that her current body was too small and frail, she suddenly began worrying about when she would grow up. At this moment, her father saw through her concerns. Thinking that Leona was still so weak and small, he should be able to help her. He told her to follow him to see something interesting. But Leona stood still, acting spoiled as she stretched out her arms, waiting for her father to pick her up. Meanwhile, Kuss, who had rushed off, kept recalling the crown prince's beastly face along the way. The magical power in his hands was already on the verge of losing control. He resolved that he must kill the crown prince. Suddenly, halfway there, he ran into the emperor's aide, Harriet. Seeing him charging forward in such a hurry, the aide felt that something serious must have happened. So he immediately followed Kuss and questioned him, asking what had happened and why a lone guard was rushing ahead alone. At this moment, upon seeing the aide, Kuss immediately stopped. Thinking that having an extra helper was better than going alone, he recounted in full detail what Leona had said about the crown prince wanting to marry her. After hearing the truth, the aide was instantly furious and immediately joined the Kill the Crown Prince camp. But at this moment, the aide stopped Kuss, believing that the two of them would definitely not be able to defeat the crown prince if they rushed over recklessly. Currently, the crown prince was surrounded by both dark sorcerers and the protection of the divine temple. Hearing this, Kuss also felt that the aide made sense. He had always known how troublesome the other party's lineup was, so he steeled his heart and insisted on bringing the aide along. Then he pointed to his own forehead, saying that he had accidentally bumped into a door earlier and gotten a big bump. Leona had even gently blown on it for him. At this moment, the aide, whose mentality had long been unbalanced from being tormented by Leona's cuteness, suddenly began fantasizing that if he were injured, would Leona also blow on it for him? How blissful that would be. No, even if he ended up covered in wounds, he had to go kill the crown prince. Thinking this, he immediately urged Kuss to hurry. He said he wasn't doing it for anything else, only for the sake of being injured. Let's go kill the crown prince. Have you ever seen such a biased father? Just because his daughter couldn't defeat her older brother, the father directly gave his daughter top-tier equipment, since she had been caught red-handed at her late mother's palace. And in order to escape the blame for sneaking out, Leona took the opportunity to report everything about her older brother, the crown prince. Unexpectedly, after hearing this, her father flew into a rage on the spot. He immediately decided to help little Leona. So, he took her to the treasure vault left behind by the most outstanding alchemist of the previous royal generation. Wow. When her father lifted the magical barrier at the entrance, a dazzling golden glow and countless treasures instantly came into view. Seeing the scene before her, Leona was completely stunned, but her father simply asked her calmly what she saw inside. Unexpectedly, Leona directly told her father that this was clearly an entire armory filled with precious items. After hearing this, her father nodded inwardly and decided to let her choose 3 pieces of equipment from inside as a reward. Upon hearing this, Leona felt that 3 items were far too few and internally complained about her father being stingy. But her father directly rejected all her protests and did not allow her to take 1 more item. With no other choice, Leona plunged into the treasure vault to start selecting equipment. She casually picked a bracelet first that could help Kiss block holy magic. Then she chose a ring that allowed spatial movement. And she thought to herself that with this ring, she could fly back to her witch's lair anytime in the future. At this moment, her father watched the equipment Leona selected. He secretly wondered, could it be that Leona truly was a natural-born descendant of the dragon clan? She had actually chosen extremely practical equipment at a single glance. A bracelet that could resist holy magic, a bracelet that could protect a guard, and a magic ring that, in case of emergencies, could instantly teleport the wearer. He then began to guess whether for the 3rd item she would choose equipment for healing magic, or simply select a treasure that could completely counter the crown prince's blizzard magic. Unexpectedly, Leona chose a necklace that could distort space. Seeing this, her father couldn't help but feel puzzled. He didn't understand why she would forego other equipment to choose such a necklace. But Leona refused to tell him, merely covering her mouth and giggling, saying that he would naturally find out in the future. However, when night came, after finishing her selection and returning to the palace, Leona collapsed onto the bed from exhaustion. At this moment, the servant appeared gloomily before Leona and asked sternly whether she had enjoyed wandering around today. Leona immediately broke into a cold sweat. She stammered, asking whether the servant was angry, and proactively admitted her mistake, saying it was all her fault. However, the servant activated her wet nurse nagging mode, scolding while worrying, feeling that Leona's body had not fully recovered, yet she was still sneaking around everywhere, which made her worry to death. But just as Leona was patiently listening to her lecture, the servant suddenly noticed that the clothes Leona was wearing today were particularly strange. Leona hesitated and thought for a moment. In the end, she decided to tell the truth and said she had gone to her mother's place. Upon hearing this, the servant's heart leapt into her throat. She didn't understand why Leona would go to see her mother, Ipila. Was it because she felt lonely in the palace and missed her mother? But Leona suddenly threw herself into the servant's arms, saying that it was only because she had been born here and was a little curious about her mother's palace. This made the servant begin to blame herself for not doing well enough, causing Leona to feel lonely. But Leona insisted that it wasn't because of loneliness and told the servant not to feel sad over it. Just like that, the servant tightly hugged Leona, and she said that from now on she would definitely fulfill her duties as a wet nurse and properly protect her highness. After saying this, Leona lay down on the bed, feeling that she could finally get a good rest today. Suddenly, urgent knocking came at the door. Leona instantly flew into a rage, thinking that at this hour someone was actually disturbing her sleep. Unexpectedly, when the door opened, it was the aide who had been beaten up by the crown prince. The moment he saw her, he began wailing in grievance, saying, "Look how badly I've been beaten." After saying that, he collapsed to the ground with a thud, and he asked Leona to quickly blow on him, saying he was about to die. Leona was completely dumbfounded at this moment, having no idea what he was up to. Kuss suddenly appeared from behind, stepping on the aide and greeting Leona good evening with a hidden smile. Seeing that Kuss was uninjured, Leona became even more confused about what had happened between the two. As he dragged him away, the aide still didn't forget to remind Leona in his mind to blow on him. Completely unaware of what was going on, Leona watched as Kuss dragged the aide all the way out the door, saying they wouldn't disturb her highness's rest any further. The next day, Leona stretched lazily. She wanted to continue checking the diary her mother had left her, to see whether she could learn more about her mother's life as a puppeteer. Unexpectedly, just as she was about to open the diary, she found the cover covered in magical barriers. Leona's temper instantly flared, thinking that the diary had actually been set with a restricted reading spell, so she began releasing magic to examine it. To her surprise, she discovered a sentence appearing on the seal, "Only the strong may read." This made Leona furious. She thought to herself, why would her mother set such a restriction on reading. But just as she was tossing and turning in the room, the master of the magic tower appeared in the room using spatial movement magic. Leona had long sensed his presence and immediately told him to get out quickly and stop hiding. Unexpectedly, when the magic tower master appeared, he looked shy. He thought Leona was amazing. Even the guard Kuss hadn't noticed his presence, truly worthy of being his beloved princess. But Leona, still in a fit of anger, didn't indulge him at all. She fiercely demanded to know why he had come here. But the Lord of the Magic Tower wore a wicked smile, saying he had come specifically today to give Her Royal Highness the princess physical training. Unexpectedly, Leona looked completely confused, as if she had totally forgotten about it. Seeing this scene before him, the Lord of the Magic Tower even shed hypocritical tears, feeling that he was always thinking about Her Royal Highness the princess, yet this time when he came to train her, he was instead unwelcome. At this moment, Leona recalled what Kuss had said. The Lord of the Magic Tower was a mage who had once destroyed half a continent. She thought that if she could obtain his guidance, wouldn't she be one step closer to getting rid of the Crown Prince? As she thought about it, she could not help secretly rejoicing to herself, feeling that she was truly too lucky. She immediately turned around and pointed at the Lord of the Magic Tower. She questioned whether he had the confidence to teach her well. However, the Lord of the Magic Tower immediately patted his chest and assured her, saying that Her Royal Highness only needed to trust him. The two then arrived at the training grounds. Meanwhile, her father recalled the series of things he had recently done for Leona. He wondered why he had repeatedly tolerated Leona's rude behavior. He had exerted all his strength to save her life, personally intervened in a succession dispute at the training ground last time, and most importantly, had even given her precious magical equipment yesterday. The more he thought about it, the more conflicted he became, suspecting that he might have been poisoned by something from Leona. The aide-de-camp appeared before His Majesty covered in wounds. As soon as they met, he asked His Majesty whether he looked handsome in his current state. His Majesty, however, looked at him with confusion. He did not understand what this person had done to make himself look like a mummy, but the aide-de-camp said these were glorious battle scars. He then told everything about how he and Kuss had gone to beat up the Crown Prince to seek justice for Leona. He said he had done it to defend Leona's dignity, but His Majesty stated that he had already known about the Crown Prince forcing Leona into marriage. Upon hearing this, the aide-de-camp immediately blamed him, saying how could His Majesty remain indifferent? Shouldn't he also have been angry and dealt with the Crown Prince? Hearing this, His Majesty once again recalled injuring the Crown Prince at the training ground. He felt that he was just like the aide-de-camp, constantly thinking about Leona in his heart. Suddenly at this moment, a guard barged in without permission. As soon as he entered, he urgently reported to His Majesty. He said that Leona had gone to the training ground together with the Lord of the Magic Tower. Hearing this, His Majesty and the aide-de-camp were both startled and immediately decided to rush to the scene to check the situation. On the other side, the Lord of the Magic Tower was preparing to cast a spell at the site, intending to infuse Leona with spiritual power. But Leona looked puzzled, not understanding why he was doing this. However, the Lord of the Magic Tower had initially thought she already knew everything. At this moment, Leona's temper flared up. She warned him not to mock her and to quickly explain the reason clearly. He then began to explain it to Leona in detail. It turned out that the spiritual power within the body was different from the spiritual power within the soul. If Leona forcibly used the spiritual power from her soul, it was very likely she would suffer a backlash and lose her life again. Upon hearing this, Leona unexpectedly began to dislike the Lord of the Magic Tower. She blamed him for not knowing how to teach. Why hadn't he explained it clearly from the beginning? This made the Lord of the Magic Tower somewhat impatient. He said that if he were not teaching Her Royal Highness the Princess, if it were someone else, he would have long been too lazy to explain. As his palm pressed against Leona's back, golden spiritual power slowly flowed into Leona's body. Suddenly, Leona's expression changed drastically. Feeling incomparable pain, she collapsed to the ground at once. But the Lord of the Magic Tower looked puzzled, as she should not have felt pain logically. Could it be that she felt insecure here? So he advised Leona to try changing to another place. After hearing this, Leona seemed to think of a place more suitable for herself. She immediately waved for the Lord of the Magic Tower to come closer, saying she had something private to tell him. She suddenly snatched away the spiritual power necklace from the Lord of the Magic Tower. Then she instantly activated spatial transfer magic. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared before the Lord of the Magic Tower. At this moment, the Lord of the Magic Tower was still confused about what had happened, when His Majesty appeared coldly behind him and angrily questioned the Lord of the Magic Tower, asking where he had taken his precious daughter. Because Leona had activated spatial transfer magic and disappeared from the training ground, everyone began to worry about her immensely. The fourth prince in particular became absent-minded. He only wanted to know when Leona would return. Suddenly, the crown prince appeared before him. The fourth prince was so frightened that he fell to the ground, but the crown prince looked disdainful. He said that entering such a place was not difficult for him at all, and after speaking, he actually touched the fourth prince's head. He reminded him that he was his elder brother and told him to mind his manners. However, The fourth prince looked helpless, feeling that the crown prince was simply a madman and had no semblance of an elder brother. Upon hearing this, the crown prince immediately became furious from embarrassment. Unexpectedly, he pulled the fourth prince into his arms and whispered softly in his ear, "Big brother likes you. I don't like the second prince." The fourth prince was instantly shocked upon hearing this. He immediately grabbed the crown prince's arm and urged him not to kill Leona. But the crown prince flew into a rage. He fiercely questioned whether he was tired of living, daring to stop him from killing in front of him. The fourth prince was now powerless and could only be lifted into the air like a chick by the crown prince. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the room and immediately urged the crown prince to stop, not to cause trouble when his majesty was in a bad mood. Unexpectedly, upon hearing this, the crown prince threw the fourth prince aside. He then moved closer to look and discovered that the newcomer was actually the sixth princess, Sholi. The two then began chatting about their recent situations after not seeing each other for a long time. But when the conversation turned to the fourth prince on the ground, the sixth princess said she also wanted to meet Leona. She wanted to see what kind of person she was to have the fourth prince so infatuated. It turned out that Leona had used transfer magic to arrive at her own witch's lair. As soon as she arrived, she flopped down onto the ground. She only felt that everything here was incomparably familiar. Suddenly, Leona abruptly sat up, thinking that this was not the time to reminisce, and that she needed to quickly test whether she could cultivate here. She immediately entered a state of cultivation. Soon, with an expression of enjoyment, Leona absorbed all the spiritual power the Lord of the Magic Tower had infused into her. She thought that indeed the Lord of the Magic Tower had been completely right. The problem truly lay with the location. But at this moment, Leona wanted to try to activate the hidden power within her soul, the Red Sea. She carefully stretched out her small hand and slowly touched it. This time, unlike the first, there was no rampage. She actually succeeded, and Leona's spiritual power immediately advanced by 1 level. But when Leona stretched lazily and stood up to move around, she found that in the following days, no matter how many times she tried, she could not successfully contact the Red Sea again. Thinking of this, Leona told herself not to dwell on it, feeling that she was already very satisfied as things were. But she suddenly realized that she had been away for many days. She began counting the number of sunrises on her fingers. Oh no! After saying this, Leona was suddenly startled, shocked to find that 7 days had already passed. She felt doomed, having been out for so long. They must have nearly gone mad with worry over her. However, Leona tossed and turned after returning indoors. Looking at her small treasury on the table, she thought she could not bring anything back to give them. Otherwise, it would easily expose her secret. But after thinking carefully, she decided she could give one to the Lord of the Magic Tower, a pair of earrings made from the tears of a dark elf who never cries. She felt that since the Lord of the Magic Tower loved wealth so much, he would certainly like such a treasure. Thinking of this, Leona hurriedly cast transfer magic. Unexpectedly, she was transported into a forest. This left Leona utterly dumbfounded. She thought that she was a genius. How could she possibly have made a teleportation mistake? So she decided to first examine the surrounding environment. Suddenly, a man behind her noticed her figure. Leona turned back in astonishment. It was actually Lakis, the one who had killed her. At this moment, Leona's heartbeat immediately accelerated. She wondered whether she could now use fire magic to directly eliminate him. But at this moment, Lakis reached out to grab the necklace hanging on Leona's chest. Unexpectedly, he was blown off balance by a sudden demonic gust of wind. It turned out that the Lord of the Magic Tower had arrived in time and stood in front of Leona, and immediately angrily questioned Lakis upon meeting him. Did he know who stood before him, daring to casually reach out and touch her? After saying this, he began comforting Leona beside him. He said he had arrived late and frightened Her Royal Highness the Princess. Seeing the scene before him, Lakis did not understand how the Lord of the Magic Tower had appeared here, and had even addressed the girl as Your Highness. So he began questioning whether the girl before him was the princess. Unexpectedly, the Lord of the Magic Tower directly revealed Leona's true identity in one breath. He questioned how the princess could have come to such a distant place. But the Lord of the Magic Tower said that the princess had merely come out for a walk and accidentally gotten lost. This made Lakis even more suspicious, feeling that no one would wander into such a place by taking a walk. He asked about the situation back at the Magic Tower, but the Lord of the Magic Tower said that His Majesty had nearly gone mad searching for her, and was almost about to declare war on him. Unexpectedly, Leona pouted, thinking that her father was not the kind of reckless and impulsive person to do that. But upon hearing this, evil thoughts arose in Lakis's heart. He thought about how much His Majesty cared about this daughter. Secretly, he felt that he must not let her leave easily. He then began introducing his identity. He said he was the Emperor of the Kingdom of Corel. Upon hearing this, Leona almost vomited yesterday's meal. She thought how shameless this person was to dare call himself Emperor. She then recalled that Lakis was sensitive about appearances and decided to stab at his weak spot. She actually shouted at Lakis, asking how he could be so ugly. Compared to the Lord of the Magic Tower, he was simply hideous. After saying this, she told the Lord of the Magic Tower that they should hurry and leave, as staying with someone so ugly might be contagious. Hearing this, the Lord of the Magic Tower's face instantly turned as red as a monkey's backside. He immediately activated spatial transfer magic. Holding Leona, he left the place. Unexpectedly, he did not bring Leona back to the palace, but teleported to another location instead. At this moment, Leona questioned where this was. The Lord of the Magic Tower said he had come here deliberately, believing that Leona's relationship with Lakis was unusual, and thus could not help questioning her. Upon hearing this, Leona was startled, thinking that he had actually noticed something just now. She immediately began to brush it off forcefully, saying that the two of them had no relationship whatsoever, that it had clearly just been his illusion. The Lord of the Magic Tower, however, believed that Leona was lying, but seeing her so adamant, he could only temporarily give up continuing the questioning. He had actually forgotten to beat up Lakis just now. But when night fell, Lakis recalled in the palace the scene of encountering Leona in the forest during the day. He believed that when he met her, he had clearly sensed his own magic. So how had she ended up as the little princess? Thus, filled with doubts, Lakis felt that this matter was not simple. He decided to make a trip to the Hassis Empire in the coming days. The Lord of the Magic Tower had still been outwitted by the clever little trickster Leona. He immediately wanted to urge her to hurry home, feeling that if she did not return soon, His Majesty would go mad with anxiety. Unexpectedly, upon hearing this, Leona propped her chin and thought calmly, feeling she needed to think of a reason before returning. She then questioned whether he should take the blame for her running away from home this time. But the Lord of the Magic Tower said that even with 8 heads, it would not be enough for His Majesty to chop off. Hearing this, Leona felt he was truly stingy, unable to help her even with such a small matter. Suddenly, the Lord of the Magic Tower came up with a reason for her, telling her she could say she had accidentally ended up in the magical beast forest. Leona pondered for a moment. She felt this reason was completely feasible. Thinking that spiritual power could not be sensed near the magical beast forest, it would perfectly explain why her father could not find her. She immediately clamored to go to a nearby village to buy some souvenirs, saying she wanted to bring something back for Kuss. But the Lord of the Magic Tower thought her idea was childish and asked whether she thought this was a sightseeing trip. Unexpectedly, Leona instantly glared at him fiercely and questioned what he had just said, daring him to repeat it. Did he have a death wish? The next second, the Lord of the Magic Tower actually took out a pair of small shoes. He told Leona to put them on before leaving, but Leona looked disgusted and asked whether he was trying to make things difficult for her now. However, the Lord of the Magic Tower immediately explained that he would not dare, that these were merely shoes with a tracking function. Wearing them was to prevent her from getting lost again, but Leona stubbornly refused to wear them. Unexpectedly, the Lord of the Magic Tower began to threaten her. He said that if she did not wear them, once they returned and His Majesty asked about what had happened outside, his mouth might start spreading rumors. Hearing this, Leona felt that the Lord of the Magic Tower was truly despicable. She had no choice but to helplessly put on the tracking shoes. But the moment she put them on, Leona instantly became murderous. She warned the Lord of the Magic Tower to be careful. Once she took off the shoes, he would be finished. The two then teleported to the village. As soon as they arrived, Leona was astonished to find that the people around them did not notice them at all. So she questioned how he had managed to do that. However, the Lord of the Magic Tower said he would not tell her. He said he did not even know about her affairs, so why should he reveal all his secrets? But Leona said that was because he had not asked. If he had asked, she would have told him. Hearing this, the Lord of the Magic Tower compromised and asked what she wanted to know. Leona asked whether he had ever had dealings with Lakis, but the Lord of the Magic Tower still refused to speak. Unexpectedly, Leona then took out the treasure necklace she had prepared earlier at the witch's lair. Upon seeing it, the Lord of the Magic Tower immediately could not resist the temptation of the treasure. He then began to talk about his own past. It turned out that the Lord of the Magic Tower had a younger brother who was far more powerful than he was. In every exam, he could not outperform this younger brother. Thus, he gradually developed feelings of inferiority. He cultivated his magic outside for a full 50 years. Finally reaching his desired realm, he returned to his brother's side. Proudly, he took his brother to fight monsters, but the Lord of the Magic Tower underestimated the monster's strength. His brother lost his life there directly. From that point on, the Lord of the Magic Tower fell into a life of despair. Upon hearing this, Leona sighed that the Lord of the Magic Tower was truly something, letting his brother die because of petty jealousy. It turned out he had always thought himself the strongest mage, but sometimes, when seeing someone like you with slightly stronger strength, he would also feel jealousy and unhappiness. She then advised him that the dead could not return to life, and he should simply be more confident in the future. This left the Lord of the Magic Tower with mixed emotions. Suddenly, he took a step back in shock, astonished that Her Royal Highness the Princess would actually counsel someone truly unexpected. But at this moment, the Lord of the Magic Tower again pressed her about her relationship with Lakis. Leona immediately clenched her fists. She then told him at once that she must kill that man. But the Lord of the Magic Tower, with a worried expression, asked again whether she truly had to kill Lakis. Hearing this, Leona sensed something strange in his questioning. She then fiercely told him that what she had experienced was beyond his imagination, so that person must die. After hearing this, the Lord of the Magic Tower's expression was somewhat unusual, as if there were words he could not yet say. Suddenly, her father's aide-de-camp Harriet and Kus tracked her down all the way to this place. As soon as they met, they burst into tears, crying and saying how much they had missed her. Hearing this, Leona instantly looked disgusted, suspecting whether they were scolding her or missing her. However, seeing the scene before him, the Lord of the Magic Tower secretly thought in his heart that he hoped he and Leona would never reach a day when they became enemies. However, Leona returned home and saw her father, who looked deeply haggard. At this moment, her father's expression was extremely solemn. Seeing this, Leona quickly waved and greeted him. She loudly said, "Long time no see, Dad," and then cheekily asked whether he had been well. But her father did not respond. The atmosphere instantly became extremely heavy. Unexpectedly, Leona then asked her father why he had grown a beard after just a few days apart. Upon hearing this, her father angrily demanded that she quickly tell the truth. Leona unconsciously scratched her little cheek. With a serious expression, she lied that she had simply set the teleportation coordinates incorrectly and had accidentally ended up in the magical beast forest. Unexpectedly, upon hearing this, her father grabbed Leona and lifted her up. He then praised her as a genius mage, able to survive even after falling into the magical beast forest. After saying this, he threw her to the ground and punished her with 1 week of confinement. But Leona immediately stood up and questioned her father. She said she had done nothing, so why should she be punished? However, her father insisted that she had already committed a mistake and must accept the punishment. After speaking, he turned and stared at the first royal mage beside him. He ordered him to set up barriers all around the palace. No one was allowed to use teleportation magic within the palace. The royal mage stammered as he told His Majesty that this would likely isolate them from the outside world. The Empire's trade might all be lost. However, her father's mind was made up. He angrily ordered them to carry out his instructions at once. Unexpectedly, the next day, Leona was confined in her room. She thought that all of this was Lakis's fault. As she muttered to herself, she could not help pounding the pillow on the bed repeatedly with her small fists. She suddenly recalled what the Lord of the Magic Tower had said about his younger brother. She felt that he must be hiding something about Lakis from her. At this moment, Leona unexpectedly received a letter from the second prince delivered by Kus, and to her surprise, it was actually a box. However, after reading the letter, she learned that the second prince had already carried out the task Leona had previously assigned him. He had now infiltrated the spy group of the Kingdom of Corel. The letter also mentioned that the box contained a gift for Leona. Unexpectedly, upon opening it, it was the head of the mercenary captain. Leona was instantly shocked.